At this time, I call the monthly meeting to order, be in January. And at this time, extend a happy new year to each one that's here. And at this time, we'll stand and we'll have the invocation by Commissioner Langley and the pledge by Commissioner Evans. That's it.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we are grateful that you have allowed us to assemble in our brand new year. And Father, we ask your blessings upon this new year as we continue to do the county's business. Father, help us to agree and disagree, but to do so in love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask that if you have your cell phone with you, if you will, please silent that or put it on vibrate. We're down to item number C, conflict of interest. Does any of the commissioners have a conflict of interest that needs to be disclosed?
I got a question about what conflict of interest means, because it doesn't say in here. It says a conflict of interest. If a commissioner has discussions with a group of people who want a certain item passed, and they are lobbying him for this, and he agrees to support their cause, should he announce that as a conflict of interest?
I'll answer from the perspective when I took my course on conflict of interest, and it was pretty well explained that that a conflict of interest was when you were sharing monetarily in a transaction that the Board of Commissioners was approving, and basically said that, you know, if there's no monetary gain, no cash going in your checking account, it is not a conflict of interest. But I think that we all have tried to share sometimes when there was a question. I mean, I think as an elected official, we all get asked from time to time. I get telephone calls from people, and they want to share ideas and voice complaints. I mean, do I have to share that at every meeting? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, no, that's what I was asking.
I don't think so.
Nope. So you make all the political deals you want to. That's not a conflict. As long as you're not taking money for them. I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, I think within reason you can. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
just like when we have that reevaluation that we go through to listen to people try to lower their taxes. If I got my brother comes in and wants his taxes lower, I would excuse myself.
Well, that's not what I'm really talking about.
Well, tell us what you're talking about then.
Well, I mean, just like I think Frankie described it well when he said, if you're out talking to people that are lobbying you to vote a certain way and you agree that you're going to vote that way, and then you come to the commissioners meeting, you know, is that a conflict of interest?
No.
Should you announce that as a conflict of interest? So, you know, and what you guys are saying, no, and what I summarized it by saying you can make all the political deals you want to as long as you're not putting money in your pocket.
That's right.
Or any relative or influence,
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be sure.
cousin, wife, brother.
Right.
Has anybody talked with you in the last 30 days asking you for support or?
Well, they do all the time.
Yeah.
It's not just money.
So you come to the meeting with already a view of how you're going to vote on a particular issue.
On most of these issues, but I can't say on any particular issue. And yeah, well, people lobbied me heavy on the hunting issue. Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I tried that.
But I told them
I tried that
support it.
before
Yeah.
the meeting started. I tried lobbying you on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
We'll get to there. Okay. Apparently nobody has a conflict.
I hadn't got my
Has to be
check.
disclosed. All right, we're down to the approval of the agenda.
So move.
Wait a minute. I've already got.
All right, back up.
We've got one resolution. I'm sorry. Item number 3 under items for decision has been asked to be pulled by the staff. That was a Project Garden, and they went back to the Department of Commerce, and they went back and reviewed that, and they're using Tier 1, which means that that's already approved the amount that we had already had approved previously. So
Is it item number 3?
item number 3 will be pool.
That's the public comments on open meetings lawsuit. Am I in the wrong place?
No,
Yeah,
items
yeah,
for
it's-
Oh, that's
decision.
discussion. I'm under discussion. Okay,
Items for
gotcha.
decision, number
All right.
3.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to have items number 3 and 4 moved from items for discussion and make that a motion.
Second. Hold on. Discussion.
Now, you're under items for discussion.
Yes, 3 and 4.
All right.
Well, that's a debatable issue, so since I put them on the agenda, the public deserves to know what these things are about. Item number 3 has to do with the mismanagement of the lawsuit that the county is present involved in, having to do with the open meetings law and the way that we conduct business. And we're going down a road that's going to cost the county $100,000 when we can settle this thing very easily at little expense to the county. That's the issue that goes with that item, and I'd like for it to be voted on separately as to whether or not it's to be removed.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
We'll take them one at a time. Why don't we go ahead and have a ruling on 3 and 4?
Okay.
All right.
Not together,
Right. One
Separate.
at a time.
one at a time.
On my question to David, since this lawsuit is still in litigation, are we supposed to be discussing that in an open forum?
Probably not. I think
I mean, we can move that
it's
to.
also on the agenda under closed session tonight.
Yeah, but there's 2 parts that has to do with any of these public issues. As long as I'm not talking about the merits of the case and giving information having to do with the suit itself, the rest of that can be discussed in public. Is that not correct?
Can be.
See?
It depends on what the issue is we're going to be discussing.
What I'm going to be discussing is your mismanagement of the issue.
Okay, we've got was the motion for both items?
No.
No.
I make a
You have to
motion
vote on
that
them
we
separately.
Move item number 3, and they'll make a motion on 4.
All right, we got a motion, and there was a second on item number 3.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments from any of the commissioners? All right, we'll call.
I do have a comment. And see, this is what becomes difficult when we try to discuss something that's under litigation. But to say we've mismanaged it, or it's going to cost the county $100,000 is really misinformation, because we don't know what it's going to cost, and we didn't bring this lawsuit. Some other individuals brought the lawsuit, and there's no really, and that's all I'm going to say.
Well, that's
I don't want to go any
precisely,
further.
you just
So I'll
said,
call the motion.
you just said precisely the reason that this needs to be an open public debate, because the commissioners are sitting here withholding information to the public and going down a road of appropriating already $50,000. If we lose the suit and we have to pay the other sides, normally it's going to cost them as much as it does us. So we're going to be out $100,000 for mismanagement. The mismanagement issue doesn't have anything to do with the merits of the lawsuit.
I'll call the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we're going to take a vote. All those in favor of pulling it off, raise your right hand. Those opposed, vote was 6-1.
Now I make a motion that we remove item number 4 off of the items for decision.
Discussion.
Discussion, excuse me.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Evans.
Well, now, what is that item about, Commissioner Brand?
The Beaufort County School redistricting. We've heard it and heard it. I don't see why we should hear it again.
Well, the reason
Until they make a decision on what they're going to do.
the reason that you've heard it is the school board is supposed to have started this study a year ago.
And when they get the study completed, they will let us know.
You're dragging your feet to cover
No, I'm
an
not
issue
dragging,
up
I'm-
and keep it from the view of the public.
I am not. I just don't sit here for 30 minutes and listen to you beat your gums about it.
That's what you're paid that big salary for.
But I made the motion to take it off.
And we have a second.
Well, This particular issue has to do with redistricting, and it's something the school board has promised us a report on a year ago. They have not produced a report. That is a public issue, and at the root of this, all I want to know is, are we using our school facilities in the most efficient manner? That is a responsibility of this board, and you're all running from your responsibility if you vote this down.
We're getting ready to take off right now. Call the question.
Okay, ready for a vote? All those in favor of pulling it off the agenda, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Vote 5-2. All right, Commissioner Langley.
Yes, I'd like to add an item for decision in regards to how our judges are elected.
Okay. Will you want to make a motion?
I make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's made and second. All those in favor of adding this resolution to the agenda, raise your right hand. Vote was unanimous. Thank you. Any other changes? That's total of 4 changes to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I do have an addition.
Okay.
I'd like to add a discussion on this tipping fee list because the assessor still doesn't have this thing right. I asked for a simple list, which should consist of several hundred names on it, that just lists the people that were added to the tipping fees this year who had been escaping having to pay for this in years past. Now, every time I ask for this, the tax assessor gives me more pages of paper that don't say anything. 4 or 5 pages should cover this entire list of the people who have been added to the tipping fee list, because if you recall, we discovered that not everybody that should have been paying tipping fees have been paying them. You have been paying tipping fees for other people who were avoiding paying them, and I've asked for a list update on this, and if you know, that needs to be on the agenda, I want to discuss it.
Okay. So under items for discussion, we'll add number 8, the tipping fee.
List.
You make a motion to add that?
That's a motion.
All right, second. Second. All right, all those in favor of adding that item, raise your right hand. I think it was unanimous. Okay, now, can we vote on the whole agenda? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Langley, second by Commissioner Brin. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. We're down to the public comments, and at this time I'll ask Jeanette Wells, and just remind you, Jeanette, you've got 3 minutes and I'll be timing you. If you will, step up.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jeanette Wells, and I'm here tonight to ask you for your help and support. On April 28th of 2017, my nephew, Corey Anderson, arrived at the Beaufort County Detention Center to begin a 30-day sentence. On May 7th, he was transported to Vidant Beaufort and admitted to ICU and passed away the evening of the next day, May the 8th. The doctor talked with us that night. At that point in time, the family had not received any notification from the sheriff or the jail about Corey being sick and admitted to the hospital. The first call then came the day after Corey's death to his father. About 2 weeks later, we called to see if we could meet with them. On May the 22nd, we met with 2 representatives of the sheriff. One of our questions we asked that day was, why was Corey's family not notified of Corey being so sick and in the hospital? What is the policy? The answer was, we are prohibited from notifying the family. That is policy, and we have to follow policy. They said that there's policy for everything they do, right down to how they wear their uniform and everything on it. They said they would get back to us with the policy. We also asked, when inmates are assessed into a jail, are they to provide emergency contact numbers, next of kin information, and if so, what are they used for? What is the policy? They said yes, they are to have an emergency contact number for inmates, but we're not sure what they are used for. They said they would get back with us. It has now been 8 months and still no answers. No policy. The sheriff has refused to talk from the beginning of this to the family. We have been in constant contact with the sheriff's representative all during the past 8 months, either by going in, by phone calls, or emails. How long should it take? This could happen to anyone's family. There are policies we should all be aware of. Again, we ask for your help and support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to item number F, items for presentation. The first one is the safety project at the intersection of US 264 and NC 32. Jeff?
I just touch it here. Okay.
Hey, good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Jeff Cabinets. I work for the Department of Transportation. And what I want to come to you tonight for is a potential project. This is an area that has the accident rate has increased, particularly this past year, and that's the intersection of 264 and 32. And what we do is we have a unit, traffic safety unit, that monitors accidents throughout the year and on different areas of the roadway. And when an accident rate rises and increases, they start looking at it. And so they've looked at this one, they pulled the accident history, and in the last 5 years, there's been 16 accidents at the intersection. Last year being a fatality, I believe it was in March. So we started looking at, or they started looking at the kind of what kind of accidents are happening and see if there's a pattern. And the pattern is that 11 of the 16 are happening like severe angle crashes, like T-bones. And so if you're going to kind of mitigate that and keep people from having T-bones, two of the basic ways you do that is with a roundabout and with what we call a super street design, where it basically prohibits that crossing movement between the two different directions of traffic. So what we want to do is bring this for your consideration. The intersection, like I said, has had an increase in the accident rate. To get funding for it, it's a very competitive type system where you have to look at the benefit cost ratio, and you have to have support from the county commissioners. And then you take that and you put it quarterly, it goes into a system, and the ones that score the best can get funded. Once it gets funded, or if it gets funded, then we have enough money to go out and hire a consultant to do an actual real-life design. This is a concept. So this isn't final design, this isn't preliminary design, this is nothing but a concept design of putting ideas down on paper so you can look at them. So nothing in there is set. So, but like I said, a roundabout gives you about an 89% reduction in crash rates when you look across accidents statewide and through the years. And a super street design gives you a reduction of 63%. So both of them have a good drop in accident reduction. And both of them are similar in cost. And so we just wanted to bring this for your consideration and see what the will of the board is, if you want to move forward or not. You can see the concepts, and I don't know if you had any particular questions. That's what it could possibly look like. Like I said, this was what we did in-house, so it's not to, really great detail at this time.
We Before we start getting into some question and answers, we have the chief with the Bunyan Fire Department, and I think Wes, if he would step up, I think their board took some action on what their recommendation is, and because some of our comments might. Sure. I think if he goes first, it might help in the discussion.
Good evening, Commissioners, and thank you for having me here tonight. We appreciate y'all's interest in our feelings towards this design. We talked about this at our Board of Directors meeting, and the Board of Directors and the officers at Bunyan Fire Department unanimously are in favor of the roundabout concept over the super street. We go out that intersection about 75% of the time when we have a call. And we have about 600 calls a year. And if the super street's not on the screen now, but the super street would require us to go down around the curve to turn around and come back anytime we went north or west. And that is not favorable to the safety of our guys or our trucks having to. I know it was mentioned that it was designed we could drive across that super street, but we have a super street now on Asbury Church Road, and we don't drive across it. We don't teach it or train it. So one thing that causes accidents at Douglas Crossroads is the sun in the mornings. I'd say half or 60% of our accidents at Douglas Crossroads are from the sun in people's eyes, and they pull out in front of traffic. And the super street concept is not going to stop that. You're still going to have to go to the end of the curb to do a U-turn, and the sun is still going to be in your eyes, and you're still not going to see traffic coming. But for Bunyan Fire Department and our quality of response, we're in favor of the roundabout out here.
Thank you, Wes.
Question?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it's my understanding that y'all have now purchased that land north of where your fire department is.
Yes, sir. And our intentions are to build a new fire station on that property. And,
So even
time
with
is
that,
right.
you think the turnaround will be better?
yes, sir. Either way, the state's only going to allow us to access the Highway 32 part of that property. We'll never be able to put a driveway out on 264.
I realize this is just a concept, but when thinking about this concept, what is the proposed speed limit prior to the roundabout? If you thought that far along.
We haven't got that far, but typically you reduce speed down to, you'd have to reduce it down to probably about 35 before you got to it. And if you see, it's kind of it's not a straight, any of the lanes that go into the roundabout aren't straight. They got a little curve in them, and that's to physically make the vehicle slow down even further. You typically, the speed around a roundabout, you're looking at around 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
Unless you got a really good sports car.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Any other commissioner?
No, I had, but Jerry had my question.
One of the things that happens at that intersection, we have a lot of tractor-trailer trucks that are going north towards Plymouth on 32, and then we have a lot of tractor-trailer trucks coming out of Hyde County and northeast North Carolina loaded with grain.
Yes, sir.
How does that turnaround affect a tractor-trailer truck? I'm assuming you've got this somewhere else
Yes.
with similar traffic.
We've got them all over the state. They're getting to be more prevalent throughout the state, but we some of the ones that were done years ago weren't done to standards as we are today. But we've got a computerized generated system where you can put whatever truck you want to in it, and it's called auto turn, and it'll show you the off tracking of the back wheels. So it'll be designed to handle a 53-foot trailer. However, also when we build those, we build kind of like a sidewalk. This one is showing red, which is showing concrete, and probably that's what we would do unless the county wanted to do some type of planning in the future out there, or maybe Beaufort community would want to take over the maintenance of it. If not that, then you would do a concrete across the whole thing. But if in places where we have like a grassed part in the middle, we still do typically anywhere from a 10 to a 14-foot apron. So it's like a concrete sidewalk, and we do that so that the trucks, if they don't swing out enough, that they can off track and the back tires go over that, and so they can still navigate around it.
Any other?
Yeah, you said maybe, like you said that maybe if the design that maybe Beaufort Community College may want to take over the maintenance of it.
If it was like a planting, if you had bushes, and because a lot of these are done, in towns, or we've got some down getting ready to be done down at the coast, and in other areas of the state, they want to beautify them, make them look pretty, and that's why sometimes they're grassed and have that. Now, I'm just throwing that out.
I was just being nice. I mean, I want to know where would they get the funds from to do a
That was
project.
just off the top of my head.
I do have
Concrete's
one-
good. Concrete's good.
I do have one question, Mr. Chairman. Just so I know, there's one of these over in Greenville.
Yes, sir.
Is
Actually, got several in Greenville.
is that basically the same design as what I see in Greenville?
That would be very typical to the one at the intersection of Eastern Portertown and Firetown.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That would be very similar to that. It's got the slip lanes. If you look to the north, it's got the slip lane coming in. We're proposing to kind of change this one slip lane right here, so it would come in at a 90, so that they would be able to see, but not take it away from the people that are used to it now. So, but it would be something like that. It'd be a single lane roundabout.
Okay.
We need a motion on this.
No, this is for a presentation. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you, Wes.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I think Jeff is looking for some sort of nod from the board on that, because they need to move forward with a funding piece if they're going to. Jeff, you let him know what you need.
If to seek funding, you have to have an action from the board of commissioners to support letter of support for the project, because it is competitive. So we can input the project. We don't want to go through the mechanics of putting in a project that the board doesn't want. So if the board wants it, and that's great. We can submit it for funding. Doesn't mean it's going to get funded. It just means we got a shot at it.
Right.
If it gets funded, then we'll hire a consultant. We'll do a final design, and we'll get back to you to present that at a later date, for sure.
Is there any opposition to us taking a vote on it, since it was not listed as an item for discussion? Okay.
So moved as stated,
Well,
or is already a motion?
I'll make
Mr.
it,
Buzzio made the motion
And second.
yeah, for a roundabout.
for a roundabout.
No, is that what you was talking about, the roundabout?
Yes. And to speak on what Mr. Ward said, I have a CDL license, and if I was driving the tractor trailer, I'd rather do the roundabout than to have to come down here and make a turnaround and go back. That would be very inconvenient.
Well, I got a CDL too, and if I had to do that turn, you'd have to get out the way.
That's why we put the concrete in.
That's right.
And then you throw a little snow on the side.
If I was driving, I'd like the roundabout better too. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got any other discussion? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the roundabout, raise your right hand. Vote was unanimous. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're not going to lower the speed limit to 35 until you do it, though, are you?
Yeah, it'll be all in one shot.
Okay, we're down to item number 2, the fiscal year 2016-2017 audit presentation. And Jeff, we're delighted to have you with us to make that.
Glad to be here. Appreciate it very much.
And it also has a needle on here, so
It's going
to be a tag team?
Tag team.
Okay.
That's what scares us.
Lee and I met Saturday night and went over the presentation, and so we decided to do it as a joint process. She said later on she had gone over a lot of the information and put it in a PowerPoint presentation, and y'all really like that, so we're going to kind of share the spotlight.
Okay.
That's all right.
That's fine.
Good evening. I would like to mention one thing to you before we get started. The audit report currently is in draft form. It's not been finalized. Our hope is to submit it to the Local Government Commission this week.
Yep, hopefully this week.
And they will review it. It usually takes about three weeks or so for them to review it. And, we don't anticipate any changes from what you'll see tonight. But just want to let you know they have not officially approved it yet. And there is one other thing we want to mention is that we are going to be required to sign an amended contract just because of the timing of our submittal of the report in January. They like to have it in December, otherwise you've got to do an amended contract. We're going to have to sign an amended contract with Jeff, and nothing's going to change. The price is the same. The only thing that's going to change is the due date of the report, and then the firm name is going to be in Jeff's new firm name because of that change he had a couple months ago.
So you'll have that resolution for our meeting in February.
Yeah, because of the snow event, Jeff was real short-staffed, and he wasn't able to pull together that amended contract in time for tonight. So we'll have that for you in February. So we are here just to give you then a broad overview by PowerPoint of the 2017 audit. And like I said, once we do get final approval from the LGC, you will be given the actual detailed 300-page report for you to review. If you have any questions after you have a chance to look at it, of course, I'm happy to sit down with you individually, as a group, however you want to, have me answer any of the questions you might have after you've had a chance to review the actual report.
Yeah, need the same here. If you have any questions for me, be glad to come back if you want me to come back, or if you want to call me and ask any questions. I'll be glad to do it.
Jeff's actually going to get us started. We're going to tag team it like we said, but he's going to start us off, and I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Can we dim the lights on that?
Like Anita said, this is going to be a review of the audited financial statements for the 16-17 fiscal year end to be submitted to the Local Government Commission. We don't anticipate any changes, and we hope approval within 2 to 3 weeks. The independent auditor's report has an unmodified opinion, which means, in our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects.
Just hit a page down.
Which one is it? Okay. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the current year audit report. In 2016, there were 3. In 2015, there was 13. So, great job. Where you went to 0, you went from 13 to 3 to 0 within a 3-year period. And a significant deficiency and material weakness is a finding. There are 5 improvement points. There's the cheats, time sheets, employees' pay, and an IT risk assessment, and then IT access controls. Okay. I can see that. The cheats is long outstanding checks, which will be turned over to the state of North Carolina. The county has an extension until February 1st, 2018 to turn those over. The employee pay, we pulled a sample of 40 employees, and we tested. Employees' timesheet is the first one. We pulled a sample of 40 timesheets, and one was not signed off as approval by the department head. Employees' pay, we did the same thing. We pulled a sample of 40 paychecks, and one employee was underpaid by 25 cents per hour.
15 minutes.
Yeah. 15.
0.25 hours, 15 minutes.
Yeah. Per the hour, I reckon it was 25%.
So there was a calculation error on the timesheets. We still use manual timesheets, and there was a calculation error in the actual hours worked and what they were calculated to be and what they were paid for. That employee was actually short paid for 15 minutes they had worked.
Yeah, so maybe it was 25 cents is what it was. They were underpaid 25 cents. The IT risk assessment, we recommend the county have an IT risk assessment to provide a tool which will identify all reasonable foreseeable threats to data and also the application. IT access control, a regular review of access rights should be completed by the county to ensure proper segregation of duties between personnel with access to the system.
Any questions about those improvement points before we kind of jump into the meat of the presentation and the numbers here? So basically, to summarize, no findings, which means you have significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. But, we can always find a way to improve, right? So that's what they are. We have 5 improvement points and areas that we need to look at and try to work on.
Yep. And the report has the unmodified opinion, which means, in our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects.
Okay, so let's get to some of the numbers here. The first thing I want to say about this slide is that these numbers are a little bit skewed, and let me explain why. If you'll think back to July 1st, 2016, we started accounting for the solid waste operations as an enterprise fund. So when you look at these total numbers for revenues and expenditures, the 2016 numbers are going to have solid waste in it. The 2017 numbers do not. So when I'm talking about this, I'm going to let you know that I've added or subtracted the solid waste numbers so we can kind of compare apples to apples, okay? The revenues overall increased by $1,092,000 from 16 to 17. The $1 million increase in revenues was due to an increase in ad valorem tax collections and sales tax revenue. Now, if you think back, you might remember that we did a 2-cent adjustment in our tax rate beginning July 1st for the 2017 fiscal year. So although ad valorem tax collections increased by 4.7% from 2016 to 2017, only 1% of that is true growth in our tax base. The other 3.7% we can attribute to that adjustment of that 2 cent in the rate. Sales tax, it came in great. It was up $668,000. When you compare 16 to 17, that was an 8.3% increase for us. So we experienced a really nice bump there. The reason for that is back in 2015, the state started taxing labor in the service sector. And also, I think it's tied a lot, obviously, to consumer confidence and consumer spending. Everybody's feeling really good about the economy, so they're out there spending more money. So $668,000 additional in sales tax revenue last year. On the expense side, what you're going to see here is if you look at those green bars, 2016 to 2017, you're going to see a reduction or a decrease of $1.6 million. But like I said, this is a misnomer. We need to adjust that for this solid waste operations. And once you do that, we actually had an increase in expenditures of $1.5 million. Available fund balance. This gives you a 5-year look at what our available fund balance has been. And as of June 30th, 2017, we were at $17.2 million, or 30.5% as a percentage of the general fund expenditures. The county actually spent $1.3 million in fund balance during last year. However, we budgeted to spend $3.2 million. So that's good news. We appropriated to spend $3.2 million, actually only spent $1.3 million. And so that begs the question, how does that happen? Well, so when we're doing our budgeting, we tend to be very conservative with our budget. We, on the expense side, we want to budget for any and everything that we might anticipate that may be an expenditure. And then salary and benefits, that's a good example. We have X number of positions that are authorized by this board for the county. And as of July 1st, when we start our budget, we budget 100% for every vacancy, every position that's approved by you. Now, during the year, we're going to have some vacancies. So we'll see savings in those vacancies and the benefits that go along with that. And then also, our departments, we've asked them, don't spend down every bit of appropriation that your department has just for the sake of spending that money so you can get it again next year. What we like to tell them is we want you to be able to operate effectively, efficiently, and, just spend it wisely, in other words. Fund balance appropriated thus far for the current year, 2018, $1.18 million. This chart shows available fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures for the past 5 years. You can see that green line at the top. That's the 35% level. That's the target that you have set as a board that you would like to reach. And you can see there were 2 years in 2014 and 2015 where we actually surpassed that target by a little bit. And then now we've just fallen in the last couple of years just below that. But still, 30% fund balance, a very healthy amount of fund balance for the county to have. Top 3 revenues. Property taxes, 57%. Sales tax, you can see 15% of our budget on the revenue side. And then our federal and state grants, that restricted intergovernmental revenue, makes up 22.4% of our revenues. So those 3 categories right there of revenues, that makes up 94% of the general fund revenue that the county receives. Again, ad valorem taxes up $1.5 million in 2017 compared to 2016, but that additional revenue primarily due to the 2-cent tax adjustment. 1% of that, or $340,000 of the $1.5 million, was actual growth in the tax base. Sales tax, again, up $668,000 or 8.4% compared to last 2016. Restricted intergovernmental revenues, these are the funds received from the state of North Carolina and the federal government. These revenues are primarily used to support the programs at DSS and the health department. And intergovernmental revenues were up $400,000 in 2017 compared to 2016. Top 3 expenditures, you've got the big hitters here are education at 31.6%. And I want to just make a note on that. That does not include the debt service on the school bonds either. That's just the check we write them during the year. So if we added that in there, that might even push us up there in the 40-some%. Next, you have human services, close second at 31.3%, and then public safety at 19%. So those 3 categories, they make up $46.2 million of the county's general fund budget, or 82% of our expenditures are spent on those 3 categories. A closer look at education. Education actually decreased by $450,000 in 2017 compared to 2016. The public school allocation increased by $250,000. However, the college, their capital allocation was significantly reduced, and we did that because of those university and community college school bonds last year. Human services expenditures, they increased by $1.2 million. The majority of this increase was in DSS, and it was actually in the daycare funds that we distributed. Approximately 75% of all these expenses are reimbursable from the state and the feds through grants. every year at about 75%. Public safety, the expenditures increased $700,000 in 2017. I lost my notes on the rest of that.
See you did. I see you did.
Yeah, actually, that was all budgeted for. EMS was up a little over $100,000, and the other $500,000 was in the sheriff's office, the jail, and communications. Other governmental funds, and these are your capital project and special revenue funds. These are things like your E911 state funds, your drug seizure funds, FEMA projects, CDBG grant projects. You'll see that for 2017, the revenues were $4.5 million, the expenditures $5.3 million. We had some transfers in to those funds of $2.3 million, netting us a fund balance change of $1.5 million. And then the overall ending fund balance, because these are multi-year projects, was $2.3 million. A lot of history here on property tax collections. So this is a 5-year view of our property tax collections, and you can see, you know, there's a little bit of change from year to year. So I went back and did some research, and back in 2014, the big bump from 13 to 14, you'll see we went from $30.8 million to $32.8 million. That is because the state started collecting our motor vehicles tax. And so our collection rate shot from probably 79 or 80% to 100%. And then the other piece of that was the year they implemented that, we had a 4-month windfall of additional extra collections. So we actually had 16 months of collections in 2014, that year they implemented that new system. So then that explains the drop from 14 to 15, because we didn't have that extra 4 months of that windfall of collections. And then in 2016, if you'll remember, our largest taxpayer, their business personal property was down significantly. So that's the decrease you see there. And then we're back up in 2017. Again, most of that due to the 2-cent adjustment, a little bit of that due to growth.
A lot of good insight.
Thank you. Water districts, you can see we've got our 7 districts listed there. The bottom line on those is 5 of the 7 districts, districts 1 through 5, they operated at a net profit. We did have District 6 and 7 that came in at a loss. However, if you look at that transfer out, those 2 districts had large transfers to capital project funds to pay cash for capital. For example, District 6, they transferred out $282,000. District 7, $154,000. So we knew that was going to happen. We had appropriated fund balance, and we knew it was going to end up as a negative at year end. Solid waste, this is that new enterprise fund, the first year of that. You can see the revenues, $3.33 million, expenses $3.2 million. Then we had a transfer in. We got really concerned close to the end of the year that this fund was not going to be solvent, because it was the first year that we had started this as an enterprise fund, and they didn't have any fund balance to fall back on, and we had all those hurricane expenses, and not knowing whether or not we were going to get our FEMA reimbursement back in time, I asked you all to do a temporary transfer from the general fund. So that's that $122,000 coming in from the general fund to the solid waste enterprise fund as a loan. So we will be transferring that money back out to the general fund. The next slide is a little complicated, and it's really small. I really apologize, but I'm going to let Jeff talk a little bit about net position for the enterprise funds.
It is hard to see, but I'm not sure if y'all can see those numbers at all.
No,
We
no.
can't.
All right, but if you could see, So you're operating 7 water districts, and the net positions is fund balance, looks like retained earnings is, let me get up here so I can find your schedule.
See, it's 7.
That's where I can
You
see.
need my report?
Maybe, let me grab mine. County's operating 7 water districts, and there's 2 of the water districts, or one of the water districts, which has a negative fund balance or negative net positions. That is Water District 2. It's $465,000. And you look at some of the other water districts, they have very large fund balances, very large net positions, and you ask, why is that? I mean, why have they got that large fund balance, that large net position, and it's a whole lot larger than what your cash flow or your cash balance is as of that same time? One of the main reasons it is a lot of these districts have been funded with grant money. When that grant money comes in, it goes right straight to the bottom line. It increases that fund balance when it comes in. Those assets used to purchase or used from that grant money that was purchased are capital assets. Those assets are depreciated sometime over 20 years or sometimes longer than that. So it's going to take 20 years to get that expense to reduce that net position, where that year when the money came in, it increased net positions. And so if you look at it, you say, man, we really are strong, and one thing Nita was talking about, a rate increase. When is it time to implement a rate increase? And you look at these districts and you have such a large net position, but the cash flow may not be there to be able to do that. The reason that is because the grant money came in. So you'd have to look at other factors. I mean, debt service. Are you able to meet your debt service? Are you able to pay your bills as they come due? So those would be some things to look at. So we can't really see the statement, but the statement begins with cash and cash equivalents. It comes down to your capital assets. It comes down to your current liabilities. Then it also comes down to your long-term liabilities. It comes down to the net differences, your net positions. So one reason I wanted to look at this schedule was to review the net positions and to look at that and just explain why those net positions have such a large number when that water district may not be that strong financially. Okay, thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our presentation for this evening. Any questions we can try to answer for you tonight? No, you've not had the report and you've not had time to really delve into the numbers. Anything from the presentation that you'd like to inquire about?
And Commissioners, again, once you have the approved audit report from the local government commission, if you'd like me to come back and present again, I'll be glad to do that after you had a chance to review it.
Thank you.
Anita, you and Jeff make a comment. During the Finance Committee meeting, we talked about possibly consolidating all of the water districts and operating as one enterprise. And we talked about if that was possible, and it sounds like that we may be able to do that in
Yes,
the future.
I mean, that's something I'm very interested in doing. Don't know quite yet if that's possible. We need to have some discussion with bond counsel about that. My understanding is because of the way that debt on those limited obligation bonds was originally structured, it was done in a certain way so that the county could also capitalize on certain grants that were available. So we've got to have a discussion with our bond counsel to see if we can do that and what all that entails. But Jeff was telling me that Bertie County issued the same lobs that Beaufort County did, and they used to have 4 districts, and they've consolidated theirs. So that makes me very hopeful that if that is the direction we want to move in, that is something that we can do And he seems to think it was not such a very hard process to go through.
I don't
So,
think so.
something that we would like to explore, and hopefully, Brian has actually reached out to the manager at Bertie County. We plan to go and have some discussions with them and talk with them about the experience they had to go through and what was entailed, and we hopefully can have more information on that at the budget retreat in February.
Well, what this has been tried, looked at 2 or 3 times before, and here's what they ran into. The bonds from each one of these districts are secured by the tax revenue from the district. So you get into a commingling situation that bothers the bond holders should there ever be a default, because the people who own property in that district will pay those bonds off. So you're going to have to find a way to do away with those original bond.
Yeah, and it may entail
Guarantees.
refinancing, that you refinance all 7 districts into one new.
And pay them off and do it.
Yes.
That's the only thing you can run into, but the bond people in the past have objected to that because it takes a vote of the people in order to attach the revenues from taxation in order to make it work. So it's been turned down every time that it came up because of that.
Any other questions?
I appreciate you looking into it. If Bert T can do it, so can Beaufort.
Yeah. I think it warrants us checking into it and seeing what we can do. Things may have changed a bit in the last few years.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Anita, would you want to wait for the final report or before on the offer for a briefing?
Sir, I'm sorry.
I'm interested in a briefing. Would you want to wait till the report's finalized or prior to the report?
A briefing.
Individual briefing, or what you just?
Oh, individual briefing. I'm happy to meet with you whenever.
What would you prefer?
Probably after the final draft.
And just contact me, we'll set a schedule.
Okay, will do, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Just for public information, I was sharing with Anita earlier, in Pitt County, their fund balance was a little over 18% compared to our 30.5%, or roughly 30.5%.
Well, since you're commenting on fund balance, may I comment?
Yes.
The only reason that you need a fund balance is to pay the county's bills from the beginning of the fiscal year, which is on July the 1st, until you take in tax revenue whenever. And sometimes that varies. Usually if the tax bills get out on time, you've got revenue, and December is a pretty good revenue month. So you've got July, the month of July, August, September, October, and November. You've got 5 months of the year to pay your bills in. You don't need any more fund balance than that. One of the things that I've observed over the years, what a fat fund balance does, that runs to more than what you actually need to run the government, is it makes the same thing that's been happening on this board for the last 3 years. It makes the commissioners loosey-goosey with your money. And if they see candy, they go buy candy. And what certain people want, they take the money out of the fund balance and buy it without a vote of the people or without taxes being raised, because the taxes have already been raised too high. Proof of that is in the amount of money that's been spent over the last several years. We need to do the financial calculation that the statutes intended to determine what the fund balance is, and set it at that, and give the people back their money, and stop wasting money that we have been wasting for the last several years. It's just good management. Your taxes will go down if you don't have these fat fund balances, because it is a candy jar for commissioners to spend and waste.
Well, what I have to say about that is this. We live in an area where you have hurricanes and all these different acts of nature. If the county does not have any fund balance, what do you think is going to happen when one of these bad things happen? I mean, because FEMA doesn't advance you the money, you have to spend the money, and then FEMA reimburse us. So therefore, we need our fund balance to be healthy so that we can continue with the business of the county.
I disagree with that. The county can always borrow funds if you need to. And keep in mind, you've got 5 months of cash on hand at the beginning of July. If you have an event, you still have cash that you can use to handle an emergency while you borrow the money to finish the year out if you need to. And the second part that I would say to this is, how many times has it happened that we've had to dig into our pockets for a hurricane? About every 3 or 4 years. It doesn't happen every year. Again, the taxpayers are best served with a skinny fund balance. And I'll cite the state of North Carolina, which the majority party up there right now, the Republicans, are boasting about their $2 billion that they've got in a rainy day fund. And what happens every time that the rainy day fund has been built up in Raleigh, North Carolina, when as soon as a different bunch of politicians got in, they've spent the money. Every time they go out and buy candy with it. If you have the authority, and the state of North Carolina does and the county does, to literally take money out of the public's pocket, why do you need to stack up this surplus of money other than for misuse by politicians and overspending by politicians?
Can I just tell you my view on it?
Yes.
And you kind of said it yourself, Commissioner Richardson. We don't have a lot of cash flow money coming in July, August, September, and October. It starts really coming in November. What's 1 divided by 12? 8 point something. So I need about 8% in July, 8% in August, 8% in September, 8% in October. 8 times 4 is 32%, and that's about where we're at.
Well,
That's the
it really
way,
doesn't always work out that way.
It doesn't work out exactly that way because we do have sales tax revenue coming in, but we do draw down that fund balance. We draw it down in July, August, September, and October, and then we replenish it November, December, and the first week of January.
Well, I'll cite as proof of my argument the withdrawals that have been done from the fund balance in the order of millions of dollars. So if the surplus money is not there, why is it being drawn down?
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
To answer Commissioner Richardson's question, for those out there that are watching this on TV, in 2015, the fund balance was $19.3 million. In 2017, it was $17.2. There's only a few ways to finance capital improvements. You either borrow the money, you tax it, or you use the fund balance. And we have chosen to use the fund balance to make some changes and to do some things in the county to bring us up to date. And I think we all understand that those things had to be done if you're going to operate the county.
Well, let me respond to that.
I think you've already said enough.
Sir, may I respond? What you said something that's totally wrong. You have misled the public.
I would say that you have misled them because
you misled
keep talking about how big the fund balance was 3 years ago, and that we pulled it down like $5 or $6 million.
Well,
we're going to move on to
what you've said is we're going to tax it.
You're out of order.
Decide where to spend it.
You're out of order.
Okay, I'll answer you in the proper place, but you're wrong.
You're out of order. We're going to take a look at the items for consent. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to pull out item number 6, the green lamp. I've never heard of this before, and I'd like to have some discussion about it.
Okay. We'll pull 6. Any other items to pull? All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the consent items, raise your right hand. Those opposed? Okay, we're down to H, items for discussion. Number 1 is the update on the animal shelter policy. Carney?
Katie, may I shut this, or is it being used again? Okay. Thank you, Chairman Waters and Commissioners. Purpose of this briefing is to update you on a policy change that has occurred at the animal shelter. As you are aware, it has created some public debate. My hope here is to give you just facts. I'm really not going to get in debates, but I will answer any questions you may have as we go into this. I'd like to do this through discussing three different things. First of all, a really brief history which led to the policy change itself, and really our current state of where we are in our condition at the animal shelter. So with this, first of all, new policy background. When any animal comes into the shelter other than an owner surrender, and an owner surrender is a verified proof that an individual owned an animal. So anything else that comes into the shelter by state law requires a 72-hour hold that the county must hold. The purpose of that is if an owner has lost their dog, to be able to have time to come and find their animal in which they've lost. Also, in a time that the animal gets looked at to see if it's sick or if anything else is going on. But there's a requirement of a 72-hour hold. After this minimum 72-hour hold time, in the past, from the time the animal would enter the shelter on, individuals could look at different animals throughout our shelter unless the staff had deemed the animal to be a dangerous animal. If they had deemed it dangerous, it was put in a location specifically for dangerous animals to make sure no one got injured there. So in the past, in that 72 hours, people could see the animal for adoption. It could start looking at a rescue, a transfer, foster, or even if need be to have the animal euthanized if that was the case. Before the policy change, there was essentially free reign that was happening in our shelter. And I say that in that any non-staff member could walk through the shelter looking at animals unsupervised. And where that comes from is not from a lack of our officers' ability, but there's times the shelter gets really busy in the public times, and they cannot walk each individual through the shelter. And so all of the areas except the dangerous dog area were open, and people could walk through the shelter looking around. Some specific rescue volunteers used this time as going through the shelter to be able to look at animals, to temperament test them, to take pictures, and they would start the process of putting these on social media to be rescued. Also, our staff would put them on Pet Tango for adoptions and so on. But we had some people that were walking through the shelter essentially that did not have the skill or any kind of training. And there was a worry whether someone may stick their hand into a cage where an animal may be aggressive and end up having an injury. Some knew what they were doing, and quite frankly, some did not as they were going through. This created a liability for our county. In the time leading up to this change in policy, I was already working on updating the entire animal control procedure manual, which had not been done in some time. Upon evaluation with the county safety director and from recommendations from the state vet's office, which regulates our shelter, it was deemed that we needed to put some control mechanisms in place inside of our shelter. As for the timing leading up to this policy change and the implementation, we had 3 accidents involving volunteers with animals being held during their initial 72-hour time. One of these was late October, and 2 consecutive weeks in December, which was when we made the determination we needed to go ahead and put a policy and change about the animal. So, if we could, I'd like to review the actual policy highlights. And if you look in your book, it'll be labeled with a number 4. It says placement in shelter. The first part of that, when you look at the actual policy itself, it has 5 points. Essentially, there's a change in those 5 points that there were times, even though our staff tried to bring the animal in a safe location, they might have members of the public, as they were bringing animals out of the truck and trying to get them inside, that may be in the same location. And usually that's not a problem, but in times when there's aggressive animals, it does create a problem. It creates a safety problem with them being in there. So we have put a secure area that the animal control officers will bring animals into the shelter and bring them into a secure area. And that secure area would be for the first 72 hours. When I say secure area, I mean an area that is only available to the shelter staff or anyone that they may ask to come inside of that area. So the policy change, as you see, the first 5 bullets are a new part, and it says essentially that in the first 72 hours during our state mandated hold of most animals, except with an owner surrender, that animals would be come into the shelter in a secure area and be placed in that secure area where our shelter staff would be able to assess the temperament of the animals. Are they aggressive? To see if they're sick, or to see are they going to be a great adoptable or rescue animal. The next bullets that you see essentially were already in our policy, with the exception where it says in making assignments employees shall. The second bullet is take a picture of each animal and place in a public identification book. That's a book held in the shelter that if an owner were to lose their animal, they could come in and first look in that book to see if that's one of their animals, and then we would carry them back or pull the animal from the secure area. As we look at the bottom of those bullets, pretty much attendant shall make an evaluation of the animal during those first 72 hours. If there's a doubt of the animal's health, there's an ability for our staff to seek that of the veterinarian that covers for our shelter, and make the decision, is this a safe animal for adopting or for rescuing? Okay. The last part is new, where it says animals deemed adoptable. After the minimum impoundment time has expired, which is 72 hours, animal control officers shall move adoptable animals from the secure runs to now what is considered public runs, where we think the animal's safe, there is a less chance of there being an accident, and totally open to the public when they come into the shelter. Pictures were placed on Pet Tango, which is a social media site we use, which advertises the animals. Our rescue liaison would try to push out and contact as many people as possible about the animal for rescue, and of course it be open to adoption. And with this, we also added an additional 72 hours that we would try to keep the animal safe. This was not there before. Because we have put the animals in a secure location for 72 hours, we wanted the public to have access to the animals for the same amount of time. And so that's been something added. So in review, to make it simple if I can, the second attachment you have in your book is a letter dated 12/12/2017. It runs through in brief the policy changes that I just said. It says that we established a secure area for the first 72 hours that only our staff would be available for. At the end of that 72 hours, on every animal that did not seem to be aggressive or sick, it would be moved to a public run where it would be total open to our volunteers and so on, our rescue groups to come in, and pretty much what we were doing before. And in addition, we would hold those animals for 72 hours. So is there any questions to that first part of the policy change or implementation?
The numbers on this, how many, for instance, dogs do you have places for the 72-hour hold?
We have, and I've got my animal control chief and Sally here to help us with that, and you correct me if I say anything wrong. But we have 10 animal cages that are in the secure area. We have 10 animal cages that are in the public run as well. So we divided the space up exactly evenly as we look at that. And I can't remember the number on cats. Do you remember?
So how many animals can you hold?
What's the total shelter, Billy?
Dogs or?
Dogs.
Oh, dogs, okay.
24.
24.
You hold 24 dogs now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if you've been keeping them for 72 hours before they go up for adoption, aren't you doubling the space that you need for animals? How much more space do you need to make this work?
Essentially, we're not, in that the animals were staying in the shelter, even though there was not a mandate, for a similar amount of time as they are now.
So you're not going to come back to us and want more capital to build more cages?
Well, I can't tell you that, but not for this policy change. It really would have nothing to do with this policy change.
Wait, let me see if I understood you. You were already keeping them roughly 144 hours. Okay.
That was not always the case, but roughly so. Yes. And essentially what was happening before in the 2 runs that were open to the public, animal in cage 1 may be there in its initial 72 hours, and the next animal beside it may have been there 5 days already. And so we just divided that out and said this area we're going to make secure for our staff only to look at, and then we'll make as much public available as we can.
How many dogs do you normally keep in a cage? Can you double them up or triple them up?
5.
It all depends, but usually you try to put 1 in there. If they come in together, you can put 2 in a cage.
By the way, Billy, I found my dog.
But we're trying to, if they come in together, you can, but if they come in at different times, you have to separate.
What is what is the ratio after you keep these dogs for double 72 and 72 hours? What is, and you say you got 20 to 25 dogs. What is the ratio of the ones being rescued? Is it out of that 25? How many dogs somebody adopt or?
I can give you that number.
We ended last year with a ratio of animals in general, I believe, was around 71 or 72% that were rescued or adopted.
Okay.
As of this policy change, when Billy and I ran the numbers, which was just before the storm hitting, I think we were at a ratio of around 66%, 68%. But you've got the exact numbers. Go ahead.
Canines are usually around 85 to 90%. The cat just kind of bring it down.
Right.
But the canines are good.
So actually, with you bringing them out of safekeeping or whatever you call it and putting them up for the public in view, it's not increasing your.
No, it's not going to.
Yeah.
This change was implemented off of safety. I mean, that was the original thing to give us a safe area to make sure our public would not come in contact with dangerous animals. Any other questions of that part?
I have one question.
Yes.
Is it safe to say that the only major change has been a secure area?
And the initial 72 hours of an animal being in that secure area, where before individuals could come into the shelter and see the animal in the first 72 hours.
So basically, that's the.
Yes, sir.
Have you considered? I mean, all the questions. Excuse me.
Go right ahead.
All the questions that I've had. I mean, I've been here. I don't know how long. This is the first time I ever had that many questions about the dog pound. But is it possible? I mean, I understand that you're doing it for safety, and I support you 100%. But is it possible that you could get a letter when these people come and want to go back there where these vicious dogs are? They tell them that you go at your own risk. Is that possible?
Anything's possible.
It's like he said.
I mean, would it be? I mean,
there's sometimes 30 and 40 people when we open that shelter that are at the door come in.
Okay.
And it's almost impossible.
And just two or three of y'all there that you can't monitor all.
They just kind of.
And there could be other times, rarely, where no one's in the shelter. It comes at split times. It's amazing how fast that.
But when there's no one at the shelter, there's still people going back there. I mean, who monitors? Y'all lock it?
I think he meant the public.
Right.
Okay.
When there's no public at the shelter.
Right. Yes, sir.
You'll have staff.
So essentially, the change is four things. Animals are only seen by staff in the first 72 hours. That's a change of the policy. Staff is solely responsible for making determination on the adoptable status of animals. Animals that are not publicly advertised in the first 72 hours. Their pictures are in a book and available at the staff, but not placed out on social media. And then the animals are given, to the best of our ability, an additional 72 hours of safekeeping for the public rescues to be able to come in and do all the things that they did before.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Corey, why do you not take pictures or videos of the animals when they first come in?
We do take a picture of the animal for an owner to be able to look at that animal and see.
While he's still in quarantine?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes. We take that and we put it in a book in the shelter now that is available for anybody to look at. If you lost your dog, you could come in, look in that book, say, I think that's my dog. We'd go out and get it, and you could identify for sure that it was.
Gotcha.
Again, just providing the safety of that secure area. Any other questions there?
I got one last question.
Yes.
When the dog, in the first 72 hours, the animal is put in there for your observation to determine whether it can be adoptable or if it's somebody else's private owners. How out of those 25 dogs, how many have you determined that was not adoptable, percentage-wise?
Well, if you look at our total numbers, we just say last year we brought in 1,000 dogs, and around 900 of them were adopted.
Was adopted. So you're doing a pretty good job at evaluating the dog. Okay.
And I would like to say the success. I want to be very clear here. That high success rate of animals being adopted was not solely because of staff. It was a big part because of volunteers and rescue groups helping get those animals rescued out. I'll be very clear about that. But our staff takes a part in that. But the big thing, the big success of that is when everybody is pulling in the same direction in trying to help.
Good job.
The last thing I'd like to address is really just the general working conditions that are happening at the shelter between our staff and volunteers. Quite frankly, there's strife. I don't have any other way to say it. And I want to talk about that elephant in the room. When I've looked into this, just to give you a little background, upon assuming my duties, I started evaluating the operations at the animal shelter, as well as every other division I had. I found dedicated staff, extremely nice facilities, and an array of volunteer involvement. From the Humane Society of Beaufort County, NC Shelter Cats, which is a specific cat rescue group in our county, NZ Shelter Dogs, a dog rescue. Barb Greer, I hope I said her name correctly, was an evaluator, a volunteer that came in and did tremendous work inside of our shelter. And Miss Margaret Peterson carried a major role in organizing our volunteers. And I only mention them because all the other volunteers really fall in one of those groups as I look at that. And I spent a lot of time listening both to our staff and to those volunteers, just trying to get a good, interesting perspective from all ways. I found out immediately that we had a communication problem between our staff and part of the volunteer force. And I say part of the volunteer force because that is the case. What's the problem? If I were to tell you bluntly, there's no trust. There's no trust between our staff and the volunteers, and there's no trust between the volunteers and our staff in those particular situations. So what leads to that? What's the problem when we look at it? And I believe the root of that problem goes to the difference of opinion of if and when an animal should be euthanized. In everything, it goes back to that problem. That's the root that comes to the strife that is happening in communication between our staff and different volunteers. So we have a disagreement. If you can take that disagreement then hits social media, whether intentional or non-intentional. It creates a storm. You've received part of that storm, I have no doubt. But that storm goes beyond just those volunteers in which we work with. It goes all over the nation, to be perfectly honest with you. We've had things from Canada, other states, all over the place. And what happens with that is we lose sight of what we're actually disagreeing about, and it becomes personal attacks. And when my staff has personal attacks against themselves and their family, it causes a problem. And they've had that. I've had that. I've gone from being the great guy to Satan's brother, I believe, if I could just say it that way, as we look at it. But it causes strife. And so now our staff is put on point, and they see that this has come from the same sites that involve some of the individuals that come in our shelter, whether it was intentional or not. So it starts a barrier that is put in place. Then we have disagreements. I think it should be done this way. Well, we're having to do it this way. And we have these terms, if I may just share. They're adversarial, rude, and uncooperative. And I would just like to say this. Adversarial, when we establish rules and we stick to them. Rude, when we tell people what they do not want to hear and we're considered rude. Or uncooperative, when we do not do exactly what others want. And I don't want to say by any means that our staff is perfect and that they don't make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. There's no doubt about that. But for them to be blamed and to say that everything going on with the communication issue is our staff's problem and their fault is absolutely wrong. And I just want to say that. So when we look at this, here are some examples of things we've tried to do to cooperate with the volunteer and the agencies that come inside. We've reduced a 5-day hold to 3 days for strays. We used to hold animals for 5 days unless they were on or surrender, and we would not allow rescues to pull those animals in the first 5 days, so that if you lost your animal, you had additional 2 days to come find it before it went out to somewhere else. We reduced that. Okay, because rescue said they could get those animals moved out quickly, and a lot of times they did, and they went somewhere else. That has resulted in several owners that did not get their animals back. Not a lot, but it has happened several times where they were just past that day to come in, the animal had been rescued. Now, we're happy the animal's safe. to be perfectly honest with you. But that's happened. That's one thing. Another is the implementation of a foster program. We did not have that in Beaufort County. With the help of Marty Poffenberger, we put that in place, where a foster program that animals could be removed out of the shelter, put in a foster home, gave them some more time to be rescued. In addition, we minimize pool fees for rescues. They don't pay the same thing that our public pays. They pay a less amount. And in that minimization of pool fees, it used to be that if there was a pregnant animal, the animal would have its litter, and there would be a pool fee for each animal, including the mother. That's now been reduced to one. Our thing is get as many out as we can. So we did that. We hired a rescue coordinator from you allowing us to have an additional budget item last year, part-time staff. We've used that to hire a rescue coordinator that has just completed her training and being able to start working directly with our rescues. We've changed the time that rescues could come in and pull our animals. Instead of it just being in the public time, that's now being changed. We're in the process right now of making that a couple of hours earlier to accommodate their requests so they don't have to compete with all the public coming into the shelter. And we're making medical data sheets available. Now, one of the attacks, I just got to explain this and I'll be done. One of the things that has been said is we didn't allow medical data sheets to go out. We never did before. They were placed in a book that was in our shelter. That book was close to the front of the shelter, and people would commonly come in, open the book, and take pictures of the data that was in there. Okay? That would get put on social media. We had to remove that book because we had one of our citizens that ended up having to come in. They could not take care of their animal anymore. I will not get into all the logistics of it. But they had to turn their animal in according to our policies. They came to the shelter. They gave the shelter. They said, here's all its records and so on. That got published. It got put all over social media that here's the records of the animal. That's a good thing for people to know that the animal's been taken care of. But what happened is his personal data that was taken pictures of led people to individually attack one of our citizens who could do nothing different than what he did. And so we said, we've got to protect our citizens. So we removed that. Now, we've since made that available once an animal is rescued or adopted with the personal information of the individual who may have turned that animal in being marked out. So these are things we've done in trying to make concessions. Is there work to do? You better believe there is. There's always a better thing we can be doing. And I would like to say that we're trying to work the best we can within the regulations and things we have. So in closing, I've visited, I've evaluated, and I've spoken with other shelters, evaluating their operation, speaking with their directors, and I have found Beaufort County has many things to be proud of. Great people. It has excellent volunteers, a super community, beautiful facilities, but the same major problem that is shared with many of the animal control shelters across the state, and it's animal overpopulation. That's the issue. More animals than there is homes. And so how can we tackle this problem? I have to say, first of all, we've got to stop disagreeing all the time and just focusing on what we disagree on and start focusing on what we do agree on. And there is something that we agree on, that there's a three-part solution to our animal overpopulation, and that is responsible pet ownership, a progressive spay and neuter campaign, and to continue adopting and rescuing as many as possible. So with that being said, I'll answer any final questions.
These mandate, the state mandated all this. Is this correct?
No, not completely. That would not be correct. The state mandates a 72-hour hold.
72, okay.
And there was a recommendation because of some of the safety things that we had occur that during that 72 hours we may secure those animals in that time frame. It was not a mandate but a recommendation.
Thank you, Carney.
Thank you.
And thank you, Billy, and thank you, Sally. Most of the people that called me or either sent me a personal message, the number one thing, they thought that volunteers had been taken out of the role altogether. And once I explained to them that it was 72 hours and secured, and then they had the same opportunities after that, they were happy. But the sad thing is Facebook and social media just kept right on hammering it, and I think that was wrong. But, you know, to solve the problem, we still have to have the volunteers, and we still have to have the staff. And thank you for the job that you've done during the last, I guess, 30 days. It seems like it's been 30 days. Maybe it's been longer than that.
6 months.
Probably seems like a year.
Yeah.
Commissioner Waters, if I could just respond to what you said to Chief Lassiter and Sally about that. There has been a major push, a major publication that we removed volunteers from our shelter. And as you said, that is simply not the case. This policy change just changes 3 days from them doing the very same things that were before. Now, it was viewed that this was just the last straw of being uncooperative, that this is the thing that we just feel like we're not welcome. And I would like to publicly go on record to say that is not the case. All of our volunteers are welcome, and we need them. And if you're not volunteering and you'd like to, come see us. We'll put you to work. Thank you.
Thank you. We're up against our break at 7 o'clock, so we're going to try to get these back in maybe 10 minutes instead of 15. Because I know a lot of people would like to see the football game.
Take our break.
We're back to the items for discussion. We're down to item number 2, jail health program. James and Lieutenant Brian.
Hope everybody's doing well this evening. I just wanted to start off talking about the jail health, where we're at right now as the health department. You know, we started operation 1st of October, so we're right at 3 months now that we've been doing this. In preparation of this, we've instituted 80 SOPs. Most of those are really directing standing orders from our provider, telling the nursing staff how to manage the health of the inmates. So most of those are there. It's been a steep learning curve, learning a lot about what it entails, especially working with the Sheriff's Office, Detention Center staff in order to make sure that we're providing the detention center health care that they asked for. We do now have a full staff on board, though one of them is still going through orientation. It's still too early for us to really dissect the data. There's been a lot of things this first 3 months that's going on, but that being in mind, we are trying to collect data in order to analyze it and to lead towards quality improvement, as well as information that y'all may ask for at any one time. So we do have some data that I've started collecting, and the jail has also done some collecting of data. But that being said, I understand that the question, the reason we were asked here was because the last meeting, which I apologize for not being able to make it to, the question was about the Sheriff's Office putting in a purchase order for some meds. I think the question was why isn't the Health Department putting that in? I gathered from what I've heard. And so I wanted to make sure that was the responsibilities was delineated. So we provided you with the memorandum between the two of us, which shows the responsibilities for each of our departments. And the detention center is actually responsible for administration of the program, just like everything in their jail, as they administer it. We were asked, and we provide the medical coverage for the inmates at the jail. So we provide that service for the detention center. We assume some of the costs to provide the service. Most of the cost is for staffing, but we also have some line item issues or needs, medical supplies like blood pressure machines. Medical supplies also would include contracting services, like we contract with a doctor or a nurse practitioner to bring to have coverage for that, as well as what we call PRN nursing or as-needed nursing. Like if we have a nurse go on leave for 2 weeks or a week, whatever, then we would have a PRN contract come in to take care of that. So that's all on the budget that we asked for at the beginning of the year, and it's covered. And then all other cost applies to the Sheriff's Office, and that includes the pharmacy cost, which is the cost that they were asking for with the purchase order at the last month's meeting. And most of that is because that's the service that they contract with. So that contract with that Correct RX is with the Sheriff's Office, just like all the other services that they contract with. And so that's, I hope, is the answer to the question that was asked last week.
No, that's not the answer to the question, because I'll answer that with a statement. When this budget was done, We were told that the $360,000 or whatever it was that was going in that budget was going to be pulled away from the sheriff's department for medical expenses and is going to be entirely with the health department. And that's not what happened.
I don't think it was entirely. I think it was the cost for the contract services was going away to us. So it was a net neutral.
The contract services included most of the meds. There was a sharing within that contract on the meds that when the contractor prescribed above a certain amount, then it was shared between the county and the contractor. Well, what did the contract say?
I think you're mistaken, Commissioner Richardson. That was the way the original program was set up with Southern Health Partners. They had a cost pool available for medications. And as you described, that's exactly how the cost pool operated.
So why am I wrong?
Function like that.
So why am I wrong?
Because we don't have Southern Health Partners anymore, Commissioner.
No. You're playing games. The old contract that I referred to, when they prescribed so many drugs, within that contract it became a shared amount. The incentive was for them to prescribe only the amount that was needed and not to overprescribe. Now we're into a system that has no controls.
That was a Southern Health Partners contract, Commissioner Richardson. We no longer contract with them. We no longer have a cost pool.
We were told that the cost would be no more than it was with Southern Health Partners, and that the entire budget was to be moved to the health department. That did not happen.
You approved the budget, Commissioner.
Pardon?
You approved part of the medical coverage of the jail in our budget. That was approved by the Board of Commissioners. As Jim said, right now, early on, first blush, first quarter, it's looking like we are having somewhat of a cost savings overall with county money.
How do you say that when the costs are split between the two places? Does that include the two places?
County money, yes, sir.
Well, I'm going back and look at this in the budget because I still have my copies, and I fought this, I was against this, and that's why I'm going back and look at it, because I'm very familiar with the details, and what you're telling me does not fit with what was presented to the county commissioners. So, I have several more questions here that we need to ask about this, if that's your purpose of being here. The $60,000 contract for medications for prisoners, was that a bid contract?
That's not a contract, Commissioner. It was a purchase order request.
I'm sorry, but you and I just are not communicating.
It was a purchase order request for $60,000 that was presented to the board.
All right. Did you get a price list with the contract, with the purchase order that was let?
A price list for what, Commissioner? Projected medication.
What were you
costs?
buying?
That was a blanket purchase order for the approximate monthly cost of inmate medications.
You're telling me that you issued a purchase order for $60,000 a month for medications?
No, I'm telling you, we put in a purchase order request for a blanket purchase order to cover the remainder of the fiscal year for the approximate monthly cost throughout the rest of the fiscal year.
What is the approximate monthly cost?
Between $4,000 and $5,000.
That's 12. You divide $5,000 into 60, you get a whole year.
At the time we asked for the blanket purchase order, it was less than a year.
What you're telling me is not making sense. But let's go on with this.
Sure.
Where is your price list for the drugs that you're buying?
We are provided a price list from the contractor, CorrectRx.
Okay, where is it? Do you have a copy of it?
Sure do.
Then I need a copy of that price list. How many of those drugs are mind-altering drugs?
Gosh, I hope none, Commissioner Richardson.
How many of them are drugs that you would take for depression, uppers or downers or whatever they're called within the medical terms?
We are a limited narcotic facility.
But you maintain, the health department maintains the license according to this document for controlled substances certification.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't say limited.
We prescribed on a limited basis the narcotics. Yes.
All right, if somebody, who prescribes? Who makes the decision to prescribe?
The family nurse practitioner that is our provider.
Kelly Newman.
She's on the payroll of the county.
She's a contractor. Right.
Well, she's not an employee of the county.
She's a contractor with the county.
How many hours a week does she work for the county?
8.
8 hours a week, and that's it? I
And
noticed.
on call. So
I
sometimes
noticed,
you
according
might
to the write-up here, that we have a nurse, at least one nurse down there 7 hours a day.
at least.
Is it one nurse or two nurses?
Well, it can be 2 at times, depending on what the needs are at the jail.
Well, which is it?
Sometimes 2.
So far, how much of the time have we had 2 employees, nurses, plus a nurse practitioner servicing 60 inmates?
Not counting orientation, maybe 2 hours in the mornings. One's passing meds and one's doing sick call.
Well, why does the write-up that you've given us say that there's somebody there 7 hours a day?
Because one of those nurses comes back to the health department and works, the other one stays at the jail and does all the services that need to be done there.
Oh, okay, so there is someone there 7 hours a day?
Yes.
Plus another one for 2 hours a day?
If needed.
Plus a practitioner?
Practitioner is there for, practitioner is on contract for 8 hours, they're in the jail for 4 hours and as needed.
Okay. So if someone comes in who is hooked on drugs, opiates, do you prescribe opiates?
No, sir.
They fight it out.
Okay. Under what conditions do you prescribe opiates?
The doctor feels like there's a reason, like pain management, but I don't think that's happened yet since the 3 months I've been there.
What about the 80 SOP that you have? I'd like to get copies of those.
Public, yes, sir. Anytime you want. One of the SOPs may say, okay, if the inmate complains of chest pains, what do you do? And it goes through what the nurse, it goes through what the detention center staff would do, goes through what the nurse would do, it goes through when to initiate emergency management or emergency services. That's what the structure of the SOPs are.
Who codes the nurse's time?
The health department does. You talking about the provider, or are you talking about the staff?
Both, either one.
I code it.
Okay.
I mean, I sign off on their timesheets.
Well, but who codes the time to an account?
The health department does.
Okay. So we have an account set up for the jail, for the nursing staff at the jail.
Correct.
Which includes the contract nurse provider.
That's a separate fund, but they're all both together, set up through the county jail, or through the jail account, yes.
If a inmate is set on a course of medication and it's time for them to be released, how do you complete that course of medication?
Well, I mean, you issue it to them on discharge, or when they leave, you give it to them in order to finish it.
The rest of their prescription?
Correct.
Okay. Is the inmate's account charged for the medical care that they receive while they're in jail?
If there are times when if they complain of something, then they're basically asking for a sick call visit, and then there's a charge that goes against them then.
But of course, there's a charge for sick call?
Yes, sir.
How do we collect that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure of the whole process, but
We debit the inmate's fund account.
His fund account that he's got
Yes, sir.
while he's there in jail?
Yes, sir.
How do you
Running out of course.
the level of service? I guess the 80 SOPs would tell you the level of service that they would get.
generally speaking, yeah. You'd be
If you have an emergency room situation, you still take the inmate to the emergency room?
Yes.
How many emergency room calls have we had since we started this?
3, I believe.
3?
3. One was, well, I won't go into specifics because it might be client
Well,
information.
as long as you don't tell their name.
Well, we had 3. Chest pains.
Were they admitted to the hospital?
No. All of them were able to come back.
Come back to the jail. Who codes the drugs? for cost accounting?
I'm sorry.
When the drugs are used, who codes that expense?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I mean, I think it's
If you're buying drugs under
Purchase
this
order.
purchase order,
Right.
and Johnny has to have drugs, who does the coding for that expense, and what is it coded to?
it comes out of the money that we asked for, the sheriff's office asked for last month. That's the account that would come from.
And then they are expected to pay that back.
The nurse lets us know when an inmate's been prescribed. And if it's a new 30-day or less prescription, they're charged a $10 copay. That's the money we debit from their account. The rest of the medications, we pay for.
So the copay is really a copay in partnership with us. I mean, we're the insurer. It's not a copay against Medicaid or anything like that. They just pay a flat $10 for whatever the medication is. And you keep those accounts in the jail, and it goes to the inmate's account. Okay. Well, I still have questions about this. I'm concerned about the high level of care that's going into the jail inmates because, you know, a nurse down there for 7 hours a day, you have about 60 inmates down there. That's 420 minutes. 60 divided into 420 is 7 minutes per day per inmate. I really don't think the people across this county are getting that kind of medical care. I think this is much better care than the average citizen in Beaufort County gets.
I don't think it's better care. I think it's just standard care is what we're providing. And we say that in there that we want them there for 7 hours a day. Well, that's not saying right. We're obligating ourselves to 7 hours a day per the contract. However, if there's not something that needs to be done, that nurse can go over to the health department and work in the health department clinic providing something, operations as well. It's just that right now with the first 3 months, there's been a lot of learning curve we're talking about. So that's what I mean by the data that we were collecting may not be as good because of that. So eventually we hope to get to a point where they're only there for 4 hours, pass out meds, and then the rest of the time they'll be working in the health department. And if there's a need that comes up, then we'll call and then go over there and take care of that.
How many new employees did we hire to make this work?
2.
We hired 2 new employees.
It was in the contract.
So really, you've got 2 employees that are full-time to the jail, if you will, because that's what they were hired for.
Yes.
They may be doing other things, and their time may be split in other places. So we got really a basic inflation of county employment as a result of this.
I have to have 2 people there in order to cover the service. Because not only do they provide it during the day, but at 2 o'clock in the morning when somebody needs to be called, the detention center calls the nurse, and the nurse makes a decision, maybe coming in to do service as well.
When these drugs are ordered from Tennessee, how do we get them in?
Via the mail.
How long does it take for them to come?
Overnight.
So we may be ordering a $6 medication, which some of these antibiotics are pretty cheap, and we're probably paying $12 or $15 of freight to get it here. Would that be accurate?
I'm not sure what the freight costs are, Commissioner.
Why didn't we use a local pharmacy?
It's difficult to get a local pharmacy to get them packaged, like we need to get them packaged for the inmate. This company is in the business of providing inmate medications. So they provide a database for us to use to help with the nurses monitoring that program. They provide a lot of service for what we needed, and there were no local pharmacies that were able to do that for us. We do use some local pharmacies as a backup pharmacy. When we need things quickly, we use some of the local pharmacies pretty regularly.
They're doing your record keeping for you, which really the nurse could be doing.
Well, then we're going to need the nurse there more hours.
We're going to limit this. Have you got anything else?
Well, what I want to do is, no, I'm not satisfied with this. I'm willing to stop talking about it right now. But I would like the finance department to assemble the codes that go with this health care in the jail, and let's run them and let's see what we've got so far. And I realize we're not going to have very much right now, but what I'm concerned about is making sure that we've got all the places that these costs are being coded to.
I think what you said is it's looking already like you're saving the county money.
And if I could make an offer, Mr. Chairman, I know you're a member of the Health Board. Anytime you'd like to make a presentation so we can discuss this at the Health Board, like we did when we presented it the first time, I'd be glad to come and answer any questions that you would have. I would love to show you anything that we have, any data that we have, and go over this in as much depth as you'd like, Commissioner Richardson.
Well, it was the commissioners that appropriated the money, so I'd rather discuss it here than at a secret location.
Wherever you'd like to discuss.
Well, the public doesn't normally come to Board of Health meetings, and the Board of Health meetings are not publicized. So once again, we have one of my pet peeves, and that is we're keeping information away from the public that they are entitled to. I mean, we've got a situation here where prisoners in the jail are getting better health care than the citizens of Beaufort County are getting, and they're all paying for it.
That is incorrect, Commissioner.
Well, look at the hours, the care hours that are going into this. They're not getting that care. You're telling me everybody in Beaufort County is getting 20 minutes a day of health care? I don't think so.
I want to call time.
Good.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Gentlemen,
Thank you.
And Chief Rose, did you say? Okay. And this is not for debate. This is a comment. So
Just a comment.
Mr. Chairman, it depends on the statement that's made, whether it's for debate or not. You can't put someone up there and give them a free rein. This is a debating board. We are to debate the business of the county. You can't put people up and say there's going to be no debate about what this guy says. How unfair is that to the public?
he wants to make a comment, and I'm assuming it'll be a factual comment.
Thank you for your time. I would also like to thank the staff of the Health Department and our jail throughout this whole process of going through a major change in the way that things were done to try to make things better for Beaufort County, try to do it in a more cost-effective way. One of the largest things that we were trying to do was, instead of giving our money to a business that was trying to cut services and try to maximize the profit, and we tried to spend the same dollar in more than one spot in the county to make programs that the health department is doing better, and to make the jail health, which is without a doubt is necessary, and we need better health care than what we have had, and that's inarguable that we're going to have that under this program. It's going to be cost neutral. We're going to do the things that we said, and everything that we've talked about was discussed in budget workshops in front of the Board of Health. It was debated by the board. It was approved by the board, and it's in the budget that we have in effect right now. So, I mean, any of the statements that were made that were saying that it's in writing, it's in an ordinance that the board has made and was voted on in this budget that we have for this year. And I thank you for
It's my job to make sure you do what you said you were going to do.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson, we're down to the video equipment and the press accommodations in the new boardroom. I thought we had discussed that at the last meeting.
Didn't we take that off?
No, we didn't take it off. But we did discuss it at the last meeting.
Yes, we did.
Just because the subject is named doesn't mean that we've had a thorough discussion. What we discussed at the last meeting was that there were a lot of details about how this was going to be done that the commissioners didn't know about. And I suspect that we got a backroom deal going on here where things are going to be done a certain way, and we're going to be told take it or leave it because 3 or 4 commissioners got in the back room and cut a deal. That's where you're going with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Anita, how much did we pay the architect to design the conference room?
Christina, can you help me out?
I don't know that we could break that out for the conference room.
Plenty. Yes, there are plenty.
I don't have it on top of my head.
The reason I'm going with that is that's what they get paid to do for a living. So I think that we should let them do their job. And then if we see something that is not correct, then we can ask them to change it. But, Mr. Richardson, nobody has cut a backdoor deal on anything.
Can't prove it by me. Let me say this. I work for governments too. I know how the system works.
Then you must do.
You work for a bad government.
People tell you, the governments tell you what they want done, and you go do it. And the same thing has happened here with this. Now,
You don't know that, though.
Can you tell me what you bought for the $110,000 that's in the sound and the video budget for the commissioner's room on 2nd Street? Tell me. Tell me now.
I know there's going to be a sound system in there.
That's all you know for
That's
$110,000.
exactly right, and the architects are designing it.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you don't know what you're talking about.
Now, let me talk about this for just a second. I have reviewed this with Christina. She has spent time with me on this, and you need to. Did you know you're going to have to push a button to be able to speak?
Amen. Amen.
See, this is a deliberative body. It is important that the sound system and the video system that is used in this be in such a form that the commissioners can approve it or at least know what is being done. Did you know that the operator of the sound system is going to be in another part of the building?
Yes.
All right. Did you know that there is not a place right now, as originally planned, for the press to come and be able to take photographs and video and do the things that they need to do?
That can't be true.
Well, ask.
We've got the press in here right now, sitting on the front row. We got the press sitting on the front row.
Did anybody consult with you about a press box for the new facilities to be built on 2nd Street? The commissioners? No, they didn't. See? No, they didn't. So these are important things that need to be discussed and need to be gone over with the commissioners. Now, you have a way around this. You can form a little committee and you can appoint me chairman of it.
And you'll get everything just right.
You don't want to do that. So this is for discussion here. I'd like to turn it over to Christina and let her do her presentation.
Christina, please, in the essence of time. I'm not. I mean, we've got in our book the layout.
Well, I think I can sum it up very quickly because this is the first time I've been told I was going to be asked to do a presentation. So I have nothing prepared other than the fact that I can explain to you the diagram that is included in your agenda booklet. It's the same floor plan that was presented to you at a previous meeting.
Well said.
So the items that Commissioner Richardson highlighted are all true. That's exactly what's shown on the plan. Again, we did hire an architect, and because audiovisual is such a specialty and the technology changes so quickly, the architect did not. What is provided on this plan is just a very basic audiovisual design. There are firms that specialize in audiovisual components, audiovisual systems, and so that is why, if you also recall, we discussed included in the bid price is an allowance. That means that the specific camera has not been selected, the specific microphone, make, model, and VIN number or whatever model number has not been selected. It is an allowance, which means we have just set aside a pot of money that says for $110,000 we will be selecting the specific components of the audiovisual system. The general contractor would be the one tasked with selecting the audiovisual company, which of course they would, because the money's set aside, so low bid is not a factor. We've got a certain amount of money, so we would be able to be involved in that process of selecting. So the specifics of the system have not been selected at this time. It is more of a general basic scope of services that was included in the bid price. Similar, if you were shopping for a vehicle, you would specify you want four-wheel drive, you want power seats, power windows, that type of thing, and then you would go out and actually determine if it's a Chevrolet, a Toyota, or a Nissan. So that's where we are currently. Again, what Commissioner Richardson said, based on industry standard and what other commissions have chosen to do, the push-to-talk microphone is one, based upon the small size of the room and the desire to use the room for other purposes other than just a commissioner's room. There is not an elevated platform or anything in that manner for the press to be isolated or reserved or anything like that. And also secondary, also as he listed, the controller for the multi-cameras that would be in use because of the small size of the room and because of trying to maximize the seating in the room, that person is located in a different room. If the commission, this is the commission's room, if the commission decides that that's not what they want, then as we're doing the design of the audiovisual, that can be changed. But that is currently what is presented in the plans.
Let me ask a couple of questions that may speed this thing along. Actually, I have three little things. Do we intend to hire a county employee to run the video, audio of commissioners' meetings?
Commissioner Richardson, I'm the Public Works Director. I don't know that I'm the appropriate person to respond to that question.
Well, that has a lot to do with the design of the system. How are you going to design a system unless you know that?
I think at the last board meeting we discussed that, and it's our intent that you still have to have someone to produce the video. I think that's what we said clearly at the last meeting.
Okay, do we intend to hire an employee to do that?
We do not intend to necessarily hire an employee to do that. We have a contractor that we work with right now, but we also have the opportunity of maybe doing that in-house. We haven't evaluated that yet.
Well, this is what I'm getting at with this, and this is what my concern was before. The second thing, and then we'll get to the final third thing, which I think will put us where you want to go, and you guys can go watch your football game. And that is, Christina and I discussed when we went over the plans, a place for the press. And right now it looks like that you could designate a press at the foot of the ramp, which if you're looking at your pages on the left side of the page, you wouldn't need all of those 6 seats there. But that could be a place that the press could occupy. And then if someone needed a raised platform for photographing, they could go up the ramp and probably do their stuff from there. Admittedly, that's very close, but this room has special problems because of the low ceiling. So, I present that as something for thought. And let me say the final thing here, which I think will take the heat off of all of you, is what we're talking about, that we need to go ahead before we get too far into this project and do these designs and bring them and let the commissioners see them and go over them and approve them? Is that really what we're talking about? Because my concern is that everybody will sit here till the last minute and then you will get a cram down. You'll get somebody making a decision somewhere without the full board and without the openness that should go with government, and you'll be told how it's going to be. So what I'm saying is, should we say to Christina, let's go ahead and get this designed and get it in here and let the commissioners look at it? I have had the privilege of spending some time in Pitt County with the Pitt County commissioners, and I know basically I haven't talked to them about it, but I've sat there. I see how their system works. It's very similar to what she has described to me, but until you do the design, you don't know that. So that's a question.
I think our staff is well qualified to come back with us with any questions that they may have. I mean, when you're talking about the press, we got plenty of room in there where you just take out 2 or 3 chairs and they can set up. I mean, tonight we don't have anybody here except for Washington Daily News.
He low-rated you.
Well, I take that back. Take that back. The most important group here tonight. How about that? It's the Washington Daily News.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you're saying the reverse of what I'm saying. You're saying what I'm afraid of. Oh, let's turn this over to the staff and let's all go away and they'll come back and give us what we want. And let me translate that to you. That means 2 or 3 of these guys are going to be in the back room making the plans. I'm talking about something where we tell the staff to go make the plans and bring them in and let all the commissioners look at them. And let's do this in the way that public government is intended to work. It's a backroom deal the way it's run right now.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The way this is set up, as Christina tried to explain to the board twice now, is that there's an allowance for this design, and that in the discussion, and we had this discussion actually at this board when they made the initial presentation, that There are companies, there are specialty firms that do that kind of work, and there's an allowance made for that. And those individuals we would bring in to say, here generally is what we're looking for. You maximize that and give us the best system you can give us. They can do that. The contractor is responsible for doing that. They can bring that back to this board if you would like to micromanage that and determine what colors or what buttons you push. You can certainly do that. Now, that may cause a change order, but we're certainly happy for you to do that. I mean, that's the way it works, and we're happy to let you do. If you want to repick colors, we'll let you repick colors. But the way this is set up is there's an allowance that allows professionals who do this to go in and say, this is generally what we're looking for. We need a system that does this. They design that system to the latest and greatest and tell us what is the best way to do it to get the performance that we are looking for. If there's an expert on the Board of Commissioners that would like to sit in with that, we're happy to let them do that.
Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me go back one more time because we're still not in tune. I'm not happy with the way you're talking about doing this thing. We're not talking about picking colors. We're talking about how the system operates. What I'm saying is if you've got experts out there that do this, and I'm sure there are, let's go ahead and give them the job and let them get in here early with the plans so everybody can see them and we have opportunity to change them. I design things. It's real easy to change it on the first draft of the paper. It's kind of hard to do when you're over there installing it. So let's go ahead and get this going.
And we are happy to do that. As I have said previously just a few seconds ago, we are happy to do that for the board. When the contractor selects the group that he's going to have come in, that firm that's going to design this thing, we'll be happy once they give us design to bring it to you. And you can look at it and you can tell them they don't know what they're talking about and change it however you'd like to.
All right, that's what we want.
Okay.
That's done as part of the submittal process. That is something we would go through. One thing I would like to clarify, just for the general public as well, the $110,000 allowance is labeled an audio-visual allowance, but there are actually other additional items that are also included in that, so I don't want the public to think that $110,000 is just for cameras and wires. That also includes the specialty lectern, such as what I'm standing at, but now it's required, it would be ADA compliant, so you're talking about something that's going to be motorized, and you're talking about the table that the manager and staff and attorney also sit at. So there's also furniture that's included in that $110,000. It's not just microphones and cameras.
You've been good not to have a report. You've done good.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, we're down to item number 6, the Hospital Authority Information Request. Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I want to change my request that I had made to Commissioner Buzzio, who's chairman of the hospital board, to get the information about the wasting or the failure to collect the $300,000 that Vidant owes us, and certain other information that have to do with the operation of the board. Now that the board has been, Commissioner Buzzio sent me a letter the day after the last commissioner meeting, which was the day the board was dissolved. So he sends me a letter. I've been trying to get this information for almost a year. He sends me a letter and says, oh, you can get the information under these terms, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? He doesn't exist anymore because he was voted away at the last commissioner meeting. And it was discussed that all those files are to be turned over to Beaufort County. So my request to Beaufort County is that I get that information. I have access to all of the files. And this is a public request. It does not require a vote.
I don't have that information.
First, I'll respond. Oh, Lord. I don't know how much deep I should go with that. At one of the previous board meetings, we're going to go back and give a little background. One of the previous board meetings, Commissioner Richardson proposed a motion. It was on information, and this board didn't even second his motion. At the end of that meeting, I approached Commissioner Richardson, had a discussion with him, and asked him if he would want to make a personal request, which he said yes. And it was 3 issues that information, three different types of information he wanted. Motion direct the Beaufort County Hospital Board to provide copies of all attorney invoices presented to Beaufort County Hospital Authority during the past 3 years. Motion to direct the Beaufort County Hospital Authority Board to provide copies of all minutes of meetings held by this board after the presentation of last audit or report of summary by the firm of Wilson Jones. Motion to direct the Beaufort County Hospital Authority Board to provide copies of all legal opinions and correspondence of any written kind between any Hospital Authority Board member and any legal counsel to the Hospital Authority Board. Based upon what the Hospital Authority Board decision and recommendation at the October 25th meeting, I took that information as a personal request and passed it on to our attorney, and the attorney and myself drafted a letter. Now, Commissioner Richardson says I no longer exist. I think that was the word he used. But I hate to tell him the Hospital Authority Board, this board voted to dissolve it, and the attorneys are working on that, but the board has not been dissolved as of yet, even though this board voted to dissolve it. So in effect, I'm still here. I exist. So based upon that, wanting to meet all legal requirements based on the discussions I had with the attorney and the attorney's recommendation, the Hospital Authority, my position as chairman of the Board of Commissioners for the Beaufort Regional Health System, prepared a letter, public records request, and sent it to Mr. Richardson, as we would any resident that wants information from the Hospital Authority Board. Now, once the Hospital Authority Board is officially dissolved legally, and there are 3 attorneys now working on that, the records, we think, well, the records will be moved to the county. Now, the attorney is working on legal perspective how those records will be turned over. And I should say, from September 15 to the current time, I have all those records neatly filed. I have no records prior to September 2015, going back to 2011. Now, I did make requests from September 15th for about 3 or 4 months asking for those records from the previous chairman of the board, which was Mr. Richardson. Never received them. At that time, I also I advised the acting county manager at that time, I think it was before you were here, Brian, and before Anita was here, the CFO, if any records came over, please let me know so we would have those records. So I want everybody on this board to know that we do not have any records from that period of time. So apparently those records have never been turned over. Now, I did send a letter to Mr. Richardson, and I think for the public, I should read this letter after these acquisitions were made. Beaufort County, dear Mr. Richardson, Beaufort County Hospital Authority has received your public records request requiring copies, requesting copies of the following. Return the invoices, I'll paraphrase. All minutes of meetings held by the authority, copies of all legal opinions and correspondence. And then I went on to say, pursuant to the North Carolina Public Records Act, a custodian of public records is responsible for the reasonable supervision of any inspection and or examination of such records. Therefore, the requested attorney invoices and approved open session minutes of the board are available for in-person inspection, examination, and or copying. Please contact me, and I give my phone number, to schedule time for such inspection. With the North Carolina General Statute 143-318-10, closed session meetings may be withheld from public inspection so long as public inspection would frustrate the purpose of a closed session. Matters covered by the board's closed session meetings since the last audit have not been resolved and therefore are not yet available for public inspection. Moreover, please note that the term public records as defined in the Act does not include communications between a public board and an attorney at law made within the scope of the attorney-client relationship. Therefore, the requested communication between the board and the authority's attorney are also not subject to public inspection. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact the authority's attorney at, and I gave her phone number. And then I signed it as chairman, CC'd 3 attorneys that specialize, one of them actually specializes in the Public Records Act, and I'll take their word over non-attorneys. And I dated the letter's dated December 5th, 2017. Mr. Richardson has received this letter. I have a record that he's received it, and he mentioned tonight that he received it. I'm waiting for a phone call. I will sit down with him and go over the records that our attorney said that can be reviewed. And if he wants such copies, I will make copies for him. And
Mr. Chairman.
My response, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When a board is dissolved, there is no frustration in any of the things or documents that a board has. It all becomes public information at that time. And we can play the games. Mr. Buzzio, for a year, has played the games with the lawyers and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, what he's trying to hide or cover up, I don't know, because this has all of the looks that there's information out there that he doesn't want the public to have. Now, if the board has finished its work and it's being dissolved, then there is no frustration. All of the information that the board becomes available comes to the county, and it becomes available to the public. And that is my request, and I'm not going to play the legal games. He's wasting the money of the board, hiring lawyers, 3 lawyers at $250 an hour. I know what these guys charge. So he's wasting the county's money again and playing a game of nothing over nothing.
Mr. Chairman, the attorneys I reference are the attorneys of the hospital authority. So that's number one. Number two, when the hospital authority is dissolved, and I'll say this once more, is dissolved, the attorneys will work out the deal of how the records will be transferred to the county with our county attorney and the hospital authority attorney. The closed minutes then will have to be decided. I don't know. It's out of my area from a legal perspective how that will be handled by the county. At least they'll have records from 2015 to the present. They have no records from 2011 to 2015.
Commissioner, I told you at the last meeting, I brought all of my records over and I deposited them with the county finance officer at that time. I know for a fact they sat in the room for at least 2 years. And then I don't know where they went after that. But all of the records were, copies of all of the records were properly deposited with the county.
Well, it surprises me because I would have gotten a call either from our financial officer or the county attorney acting at that time, or I kept asking you for them. Why didn't you give them to me? Because I was chairman at the time.
No, I deposited them with the county. I don't trust you. I deposited them with the counties for safekeeping. So you need to be talking to the county finance officer about where the records are, because she indicated she thought they may have been taken to storage somewhere at the last meeting.
Commissioner Richardson, one comment before we move on. The board has one more meeting, which is, it's not been.
Sometime the end of this month.
Sometime the end of the month. Okay. Let's go to the manager's report. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. There were 3 questions that were asked or requested at the last board meeting. First of all, there was a request on the county personal vehicle use policy. You have a copy of that policy in your agenda item starting on page 80, right from 80 to 81. I will note on that policy is currently being reviewed, as is the entire county personnel policy. I think the board's aware of that. Actually, a commissioner serves on that board, on that committee that's reviewing that. So we have identified a couple of issues with that. In that specifically on page 81D1, where it talks about vehicles being used by emergency services, is excluded from that. I don't know why we would have put in a policy that our animal control on-call folks and our water department on-call folks are able to take their vehicles home, but our emergency management, our EMS folks who are on call as well and who are responding to calls like they've done for the last several nights are not allowed to take this vehicle home when they're on call. So that was one of the things that we identified. So that will be being corrected and brought forward. But that is the county personnel side. That's the county personnel policy that addresses use of county vehicles. And then also attached to that, starting on page 82, is the sheriff's office policy relating to their vehicles and the rules they follow under the use of their vehicles. On page 84, Chief Deputy Rose has also provided for you their policy on vehicle replacement and maintenance. He wanted you to also see that was in place. Any questions the board may have, I'll be glad to entertain on the vehicle use policy.
Who's the commissioner on that committee?
Mr. Langley.
Commissioner who?
Langley.
He didn't know it. Thank you.
Actually, did I not say that right?
Yeah. You said Langley.
I was the one to ask for the policies to be shown.
No. On the current personnel policy review.
Yeah, I'm on there.
Okay.
The travel policies are part of the overall.
Okay, I missed it. I got it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I hadn't said something wrong. You indicated that we had a committee working that he was on, that he didn't know he was a. So,
Well, before you move on, Mr. Manager, there's two things going on here. Page 80 and page 81 is the county policy that has been approved by the county commissioners.
That's a county personnel policy, yes, sir.
Yeah, and what this thing says is, one item in here, D2, says the sheriff may authorize law enforcement officers to park vehicles assigned to them at their place of residence when not on duty. This thing also says, item B on section 10, county vehicles, equipment, and tools are not to be used for personal purpose. So we're talking about all of the vehicles. We had a discussion at the last meeting that sheriff was different than the rest of the county. According to the county personnel policy, the sheriff is not different from the rest of the county because his use of vehicles is discussed in the county policy that was approved by the county commissioners. Now we go to page 82 and we have policy number 2.09, use of county vehicles. This is out of the sheriff's department. This has never been approved by the county commissioners. What this policy says is number A, to show you how important it is. It's the first thing in there. Vehicles owned by the county and assigned to the sheriff's office shall be used for official business only unless the specific use is approved by the sheriff or chief deputy. Well, that's not what the county policy says. The county policy says you can't use these vehicles for personal use. And anybody in this county that thinks that they ever intended for their tax money to go for any county employee to use any piece of county property for personal use, I am sure is very offended. It is clear to me from the documents that have been submitted that the sheriff's office is not authorized to allow people to use county vehicles for personal use. Now, I realize there's an occasional emergency and that sort of thing, but we're talking about routine daily use of county vehicles for personal use. To that end, I'm making a motion that the sheriff be directed by the county commissioners to assemble a report of all of the estimated mileage of personal use vehicles within his department, and that those deputies, and the sheriff included, if he's used it for personal use, that they pay the county at the going rate, at the federal rate, mileage for the use of those vehicles. That is my motion.
Is there a second to his motion?
Come on, boys, brave up.
Okay, it dies.
These guys are really aggressive in looking after your money.
Did you get that on the camera, Randy? You did. Good. Chief Rose, would you want to respond? You sure can.
The sheriff is a stickler to law, to policy, always has been, so annoyingly so.
Charlie, how about talking into the microphone?
I'm going to do the best I can. I didn't really want to talk very much at all today. I'm really not feeling all that well, but I'm here, and I feel like I needed to comment on that. The sheriff he works hard to try to make sure that the deputies in the office does what we're supposed to do based on what the Constitution says, but what the law says. We answer to the people. You know, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of months. I missed two meetings. Once because I was in the mountains at a sheriff's conference, and then the second meeting that I missed, I wasn't here because I caught wind of what was going to happen, and it ended up being, just a name calling session. And there was really no need for me to be here for that as well. So I missed two meetings, and the only thing that we've really proved is that when I'm not here, that we can't keep our hands to ourselves. There's a lot of things that this board can do. There's a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of powers that this board has. There's a lot of responsibilities as a board that's neglected for years and years and years and years, and you talk about it and you squabble about it, but you don't get it done. We need better leadership, and it needs to come from this board. And it's not going to start 7 at a time. It's going to start 1 at a time. There's going to have to be decisions that are going to be made that you're going to have to be better.
I started.
You, for many years, have called everybody a thief and a liar. There's old proverbs that says a thief calls someone a thief and a liar calls everybody a liar. Well, you think everybody's a lying thief, and you think that government is corrupt, and you think that government is the collection of the lowest common denominator. I worked for the government because I wanted to get in law enforcement. I wanted to be a door kicker. I wanted to go out and I wanted to rope and wrangle. Over the last 7 years, I became an administrator, and I do things completely different. You know, I'm more of a facilitator for the folks that do go out and do the good work. I know the good that is done. I know the good that is done by the county employees, your county employees. Not the sheriff's employees, but your county employees that you beat on and talk about just about on a daily basis when it comes to meeting, and you mistreat, and it's unfortunate. We need better leadership. You raised your hand, so do it. You need to do it. The policies that you want, you can make a motion, you can vote on it, and you can make any ordinance you want to, but you don't have the legal authority to make policy over the sheriff, who's an elected official as well.
Wrong.
And
totally wrong.
That is your opinion.
It's thievery to use
And
those cars for personal use. That is
the
stealing
information,
from the public.
The information that's been brought out has been brought out for many reasons. Some of it's political. A lot of it has been politicized, and a lot of it has been exaggerated. You want to make it. You want to make people think that the people within the government are doing things wrong just because they want to, and just daily. The occurrences that were brought up, I'm not going to say that the occurrences didn't happen. There was a time where a deputy who was working on one of their days off, out of clothes, they were out of their uniform, they were working, and they took a dog to the vet. An occasion. There was an occasion where deputies do get stopped. You know, we are not, we do not make the policies and the standard practices for the highway patrol. If a deputy gets stopped, just like any other person, the trooper can write that deputy a ticket. We have policies that are stronger than any of the county government, the county agencies that you actually cover on what happens if someone does violate the law or violate the policy. And we do a pretty aggressive job of making sure that we abide by those, or if somebody does break those policies, that we do something about that. You know, I didn't come here to have a back and forth discussion, but I felt like I needed to say that. You've been wrong many times in the past, and this is just another example of you being wrong, and that's fine. That's more than your opinion, but that's all I have to say this time, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to item number 8.
Oh, I got 2 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
He's got 2 more.
At the last meeting, there was a discussion about a county littering ordinance. In that, I was directed to ask if there were any other counties that had put an ordinance in place above and beyond state law regarding littering. I did that. I sent that request to the city county managers listserv, which touches every city and county manager in North Carolina, as well as many other staff members, and asked them, was there any other city or county that had laid an ordinance on top of state law regarding littering, and I received no response on that. You have in your agenda item, starting on page 88, the section out of North Carolina Criminal Law, Chapter 14-399 on littering. That is enforceable by any law enforcement officer who has jurisdiction, is my understanding, so that is on the books. I also have included for you the North Carolina Department of Transportation, their information regarding Swat a Litter Bug, where you can report folks that you see littering, and also their campaign for TARP awareness, which is there are also laws that require you to tarp your load and make sure that load is secure and you're not littering it across the ground. So the information there is provided for you to based on your request, and to see that there are programs in place and laws in place to address that. If you would like to go above and beyond that, it's my understanding that you would be singular in that, so far that I know of in the state.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I was the spark plug on this, and I just want to say I'm very satisfied with what the manager has found, that there are adequate laws on the books to take care of these things. The tarping thing is really a big deal, because I see plenty of people in Beaufort County hauling their garbage to the roll-off, and they have half of it when they get there because it was not secured, and it's all over the road. And I think, litter bug? We've had the litter bug program in front of the commissioners before. I think that we probably should request from the Department of Transportation the postal cards that you use to make that work, and that we make them available, keep them out here in the front office and let people have those, because the way that works, if you're driving down the road and you see somebody littering, all that you have to do is fill the card out, put their tag number on it, drop it in the mail. It goes to Raleigh, and it's just like the statute says. They get a letter saying that they have been observed littering. Now, you say, okay, people are going to turn people in falsely. Well, if you turned in falsely and weren't littering, you don't have anything to worry about. The other thing is if you are littering, somebody knows and in an official place. It does do some good. But I think that I would like to ask, well, I'll have to make a motion because nothing happens unless I make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we put the litter bug law along with how to use it on the county's website so that the public has quick access to that and they can use it. But the other discussion that we need to be having is how aggressive Beaufort County wants to be in going after the litter bug. In other words, do we want to confer with the sheriff, who cooperates with us very well, to start being more aggressive in the enforcement of the littering laws in North Carolina? This is something that if you put pressure on it, and it doesn't take a lot of pressure, and keep pressure on it, you'll see a lot less littering. And of course, I'm willing at a future time to talk about putting a deposit tax on every candy wrapper there is out there. The kids will pick them up, take them to the store, and spend the money. And bottle and everything else, because if you go up and down the roads in North Carolina, there's tons and tons of waste and litter and trash. And unless we start trying to solve this problem, it is not going to get solved. It's been here too many years.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
We're happy to put it on the website without a motion. Mr.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Could I ask County Manager a question?
Yes, sir.
Brian, when somebody comes in for a permit to construct a house or building of some type,
yes, sir.
Our planning department sends inspectors out?
They do.
And during the process, do they go on site?
They do.
As I mentioned last time, there's in state law there's about construction driveways and certain type of material they have to construct in order to prevent mud contamination. Do they inspect for that?
I'm not an inspector, so I don't know. I think that on the erosion control piece, they would look at that. I'm not sure if
Well, I know there's
DOT
erosion
looks
control.
at.
I think DOT takes care of that.
Yeah,
I know, but counties and towns do have the right to inspect also. You're right.
I'm not sure if we do or not. I can find that out.
Yeah, because you got erosion where they put up the stuff.
Well, typically unless you're disturbing a certain amount of land, there's not an erosion control that kicks in, permit that kicks in.
Well, I'm interested in two things, that and the construction driveway.
Okay.
Not too much work, though.
Yeah, no, I don't. We'll find out. I'm not sure because I don't think that falls under state building code, so I don't know that we have the jurisdiction to even enforce that. But I will check on that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What are you asking for, Ron?
Excuse me?
What were you asking for?
Just some information with our planning department, if they have the authority on construction driveways and erosion control.
My question is, if I'm building a house, are you talking about the mud and debris?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought
For
you
the
were.
road construction, and then the others, the erosion control.
We might make an inquiry to the highway department about how they view that, because they have the responsibility for the safety of the roadway.
And typically, I think that's the folks that, and it's usually on larger projects where they have that set up as part of the erosion.
Yeah, I know they do for residential areas too, but
Well, it's got to be an acre for the erosion control that the manager's talking about. You have to disturb an acre to be required to get a permit for erosion control. And as a part of the permit for erosion and control, you're required to have what's called a construction entrance, which is usually a washed stone entrance, usually 60 feet long and 10 feet wide. And that particular policing of that is done by DENR, by the land quality section out there.
as long as you're mentioning it.
But any dirt that gets on the highway that's as a hazard to the public, the Department of Transportation can there's some law that they can use on it.
Yeah, the law actually says 12 feet by 50 feet, construct of 6-inch of 2-inch to 3-inch coarse aggregate over a geotextile fabric to prevent mud contamination.
Yeah.
We'll be glad to bring that back to you at the next meeting, just kind of an update on what that.
You want to go ahead and address the FEMA map?
Yes, sir. That's the last item on the piece, and that was regarding expediting the new proposed FEMA maps. You'll see on page 96, there's an email between Mr. Randy Munt with DPS and myself, in which Mr. Munt talks about the process and the way that works. It goes to FEMA. And currently that they're limited on the number of counties. They can only take 4 to 5 counties going forward at one time to FEMA. They currently have 20 counties that are already in the appeals and comments process that they've cleared out. And through all that, you see where he's saying they're trying to group counties together so that they don't have conflicts with the counties that butt up against each other, because if they do, then they've got to go back and start the process again. So he says that their schedule right now shows that they believe they will have the new FEMA maps effective in Beaufort County effective February of 2019.
Well, Mr. Manager, I just happened to call him. He had just finished speaking to you. And when I called him, if I'd have known you talked to him, I wouldn't have worried about it. But at any rate, he told me, I think, exactly the same thing that he told you. But this is out of the state's hands at this point in time. This is in the federal bailiwick to make this thing move forward. And I really think that what the county should do at this point is to get with our elected representatives, Walter Jones for this district and the 2 senators, and ask them to put a shoulder to this to move it along. Because the work is done by consultants. I think Dewberry Davis, somebody like that, does this under contract. It's all done right just outside of Washington. And we need the political pressure at this point. Because I think Munt's right. The state's done everything they can do. And in order to make something happen, I'll make a motion that the county approach our elected officials in Washington, D.C. with the request that this be expedited, because the part that's not in here is this should have been done 2 years ago. These guys have been 3 and 4 years doing projects that should have been done in a year and a half.
Second.
So I think we need to get behind it. It's a great savings to a lot of people in Beaufort County.
Second.
We got a second. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Vote was unanimous.
So is that a letter from the chairman of the board?
Yes, whatever y'all think the best way to proceed is.
And also, Hood, when you be up there next month, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah. You be up there next month, be a good time to. You got their attention.
Yeah.
All 3 of them together, so it'll be a good time for you.
It'll be a good time for us to personally approach it.
Okay, we're down to the item that we added, and that's on the tipping. Bobby, you want to step up there?
Let's go.
I'm going to let Commissioner Richardson ask you what he's trying to get one more time.
This report that we're looking at tonight was the next morning. I wrote the notes down, what he wanted, and asked our programmer to do this. This is the report I got. Okay.
Well, your programmer didn't know what he was doing, if that's what you got. What I want is a list of the nonprofits and anybody else that had not been paying tipping fees until the commissioners got behind this about a year ago and said everybody has to pay a tipping fee if they have garbage. That's the list I want. That should be a list of 3 or 4 pages. It shouldn't be 20 and 30 pages. I don't want all that other
You
stuff.
brought that over here one time, Mr. Richardson.
No, sir, we sent it back because it wasn't understandable. You could not take the list and definitely tell who was who.
Mr. Richardson, we understand that at the tax office, and I believe I was hired by the commissioners to run the tax office, we have 6 or 7 people working on the solid waste. If you see that we took all the dumpsters in this first item up here, we have worked hard on this, and I believe this report is about as near right, and to say it's 100%, I'd be wrong.
I'm not
But
talking-
It could be right one way or the other.
I'm not talking about right and wrong. I'm talking about a report that consists of 20 pages. You couldn't have had 20 pages times 50. You couldn't have had did you have 1,000 people that you added to the tip and fee tax or fees when you straighten this out?
We probably had a few more, but we took off people. Mr. Richardson, I can bring one report over here. It could be 57,000 pages, and that way we could check every one of them, who got, who didn't.
Sir, you work for the board and the public, and I've
I
asked
do.
for information to be presented in a certain way. I've not asked to spend weeks and weeks doing your job.
You're not doing my job. I'm doing my job. I believe I was appointed by the commissioners to do my job, and I have certainly done it over 25 years. And if anybody questions, I've got a problem with it.
Bobby, I think the number, if I remember correctly, was just a little over 1,000.
I think so too, yes, sir.
Just a little over 1,000,
And we've
which you-
added some, we've
which he's
taken
had
off
that
some,
list.
And we will add some more probably, and we will take off some more. But to get it ever right, it's going to take a couple of years. And I said that when I first said it. You remember we started off with just the residential campers and mobile homes. Now we didn't do business. Now we're doing the business. If they got a dumpster, we excuse the business. We do all houses, campers, everything that generates garbage, we're doing it now. And I believe this is a pretty good report. I believe I've been bringing good reports.
Well, let me ask a couple questions and I'll be done. I'm not going to belabor this because I'm going to put this in writing and bring it back just to make sure. You're telling me that Joseph Henry Lander, Boston, was not paying tipping fees until this year?
I don't know where Joseph Lander, I don't know. I don't have that in front of me.
Well, according to this, he's paying $290 in tipping fees. You're telling me that Roy L. Simpson did not pay tipping fees until this year. You're telling me that Rick Stevens Builders did not pay tipping
They
fees
did.
until this year.
Yes, they did.
You're telling me that, why are they on this list?
We're getting a dumpster in here now. These people, there's a dumpster sits out here in the back. If that dumpster weren't there, we'd be charging every building in this county on this project a tipping fee, which could mean up to about 8.
Well, some of these people
Got a
I know.
dumpster right here.
So you're telling me that Shelley Tubal did not pay tipping fees until this year. See, the list doesn't really tell you anything. I want the new
Right.
additions.
The thing that would tell you something, Mr. Richardson, is looking at our listing and our bills. That's what you need to see. I can bring that over to you if you want. It's 57,000 of them.
Mr. Parker, you are still playing with this and scrambling it and making it into
Sir,
something
Mr.
that it's
Richardson,
not.
I'm not playing with it and scrambling it.
Mr.
I'll
Chairman.
give it to you in writing. I want the list of the new people that have been added that are paying tipping fees that you have added. I don't want everybody in Beaufort County to have to sit down and go through this list and sort it out myself. We're paying you to do a job, and you're not doing it.
I am doing my
Point of order,
job.
Mr. Chairman.
No, you're not.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Richardson, you called me one time back dragging my feet and everything, but you better be careful with it.
Okay.
You are dragging your
Chairman.
feet.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
You got to get up early in the morning to stand with me, Mr.
You're
Richardson.
dragging
You are
your
so-
feet. You're not
you're
doing
so
what you're
dishonest.
You're,
so dishonest.
you're out of order.
No, I'm not
Yes,
out
you
of
are.
order.
Yes, you
Yes, you
are.
are out of order.
A public servant
Yes,
up
you
there
are.
that
You're out of order.
can't produce a list after we spent $800,000 to give him all that computer stuff?
Yes, sir. You gave us a good system. too. It's beautiful.
Okay. Brian?
Mr. Chairman, I've seen the list. I think the list, and it may be a little more of an explanation of the list itself. My understanding in looking at the list is that it took what the programmer was asked to do was to take last year's 27 or 20 whatever last year was that's on the books. And look at the tipping fees on those, and then take this year's after the change. And if there was a difference between the two, then to note it. And on that list, it shows the difference. So there may be a plus or there may be a minus, but it shows any difference that there was between last year and the current year is what that list does.
The first
Good
And I
Lord,
think
we've had a terrible system then.
I think that was
done
what
your job.
Mr. Parker was trying to show, and I think that's what that list reflects.
You done your job.
And if you'll check the revenue, and I didn't bring a revenue sheet, but there was quite an increase in the revenue too on solid waste. So I think that's where we were headed because we've always been going backwards on solid waste because we hadn't been getting everything. I
Thank
think
you.
I called that to your attention last year, and I had been calling that to your attention for several years, but we didn't want to change it, so that's where we are.
All right, thank you, Bobby.
Yes, sir.
We're going to move into items for
Sorry about
decision.
that. No problem.
Number one, the acceptance of the grant funding. Christina?
Commissioners, I'll do my best to keep this brief, but I do have to take a little bit of time because this is great news. I stand before you really and honestly ecstatic, and all of the staff here feels the same way. Back in July of 2017, you all approved for us to submit an application to the Golden Leaf Foundation, possibly to fund generators for water department sites on the north side of the river. If you recall, we had talked about implementing that in a three-phase plan, and basically we were awarded $450,000 grant money by Golden Leaf to assist us with that project. So that's basically 1/3 of the overall cost of the entire system, so one phase of the three-phase project. Just another thing to add to this, this is classified as a mitigation project, and so once again, we're really blessed to be awarded mitigation funds because there were so many other communities that suffered damage during the Hurricane Matthew. So this is excellent news. I highly recommend that you accept this grant funding. The Golden Leaf Foundation's requirements are very minimal because of the importance of the restoration for Hurricane Matthew. So we met with them this morning in Rocky Mount and reviewed the funding letter in detail. I believe in speaking with McDavid Associates, we're more than capable of completing and fulfilling all of the grant requirements. So I ask that you accept this funding.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Brand and a second by Commissioner Booth. All those in favor of accepting the grant, raise your right hand. Vote was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. We're down to item number 2, the purchase of new ambulance. Carney?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Just real briefly, we found a issue in our EMS system several months ago that in the past 6 months we've had about 12 calls, it's actually more now, of dealing with bariatric patients that really strained or even went past what our capabilities were in our current units. 2 times, or if not 3, we've had to bring in a unit from outside of the county to come in and carry a patient to the hospital simply because of the weight or the girth of the patient that our current EMS trucks anywhere in the county could not do successfully. With that, when we first found this out, Operations Chief Mercer and myself said we cannot have this. We went for the quickest fix we could at the most economical way, and we did a retrofit in one of our own trucks, which ended up extending the girth of a stretcher in an engineered way to allow us up to a 700-pound patient. But that did not help us in any way of our actual responders being able to help lift. But we said we've got something, we're moving forward. That still didn't cover everything that we have as far as the need for calls in our county. So I wrote a letter. You have that letter in your package. Operations Chief Mercer helped me put all that together, sent it to the manager and said, look, this is where we are. We need some help. Upon his recommendation, we went to Vidant. I want to make sure I get this correct. Vidant Hospital Beaufort. It says a hospital foundation in there, but we went to Vidant Hospital Beaufort, in which and told them of our request, and they graciously funded us I want to make sure I say this correctly, but they funded us the ability to be able to purchase a truck at the tune of $193,513. And so that money was received today with Commissioner Chairman Waters, the manager, Operations Chief Mercer, and myself. And I'd like to go ahead and move forward going through the official bidding process as we look at getting one of these units and being able to bring those in.
Do I hear a motion to?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Brand and a second by Commissioner Buzzio. Any questions?
Now you know I've got some.
Go ahead.
Where is this unit going to be stationed?
We've not made a final determination, but we're looking at the old Ford station being possibly where we put it. Because of the calls that mostly are happening, it is in a round Washington area as we look at that, more centrally located on the north side.
Are you going to have a separate staff for this unit?
Thank you for asking that question. No, the truck we are looking at designing will be able to be used as a normal EMS unit. And so we're going to be able to put this in play with a normal stretcher, running normal calls. It'll be staffed under our normal situation, so it's not bringing any one addition. What we will have the ability to do is switch over to a bariatric stretcher if we have that particular call. And then we would end up doubling up a unit for that patient specific. But that's really not anything more than we're doing right now. We end up with a couple of fire trucks and a couple of EMS trucks when we have this situation. So it's not adding any staff, but that truck would be used under normal conditions as a regular ambulance, but could be retrofitted. It actually has a lift. I say retrofitted, the stretcher could be switched out and used for the specific incidents that we have a bariatric patient.
Vidant, have you got the agreement from Vidant insofar as them giving us the money yet?
Yes.
And it doesn't have any particular reservations in it?
The only reservation it has is that we have to put a sticker on the sides that this ambulance was purchased with funds from Vidant, and that any additional funds that if we're able to acquire an ambulance at less than this cost, then we use those funds for health care needs instead of giving it back to them.
Is it from the Vidant Foundation, or is it from the Vidant Corporation, or is it University Health Systems Corporation?
Vidant Hospital, Beaufort.
It doesn't say foundation on it.
No, it is out of the local hospital's budget.
Well, that's part of that $300,000 that we didn't collect. They can easily afford to do this. I'm going to vote for it because I don't want to be negative on it, but I'm always suspicious of Vidant. They're very self-serving.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Corning, I'm going to ask you a question you probably won't be able to answer, but do you have any idea what the longevity on one of these ambulances would be?
It's the same longevity of our other EMS units. It would be the same, yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't know whether it was heavier or anything like that.
The difference of the body, and Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong on anything, the difference of the body is it's going to have a lift system that folds underneath it. But really, when it looks at the chassis mount itself, it's not much different chassis mount than what we're currently using.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to thank the county manager and Tony for their work on this project. And I also like to remind the residents of this county that since Biden has been a owner of Biden Beaufort Hospital, they've been a good neighbor. And so far, the way I figured out, in the last 4 years, they've given this county about $1.3 million to use for health care. And I think that's, they should be complimented on that. Plus, they've spent about $47 million on upgrading Beaufort Hospital and the clinic that they built out in Bellhaven, which has seen probably over 20,000 visits by patients. And I understand that there's hardly any wait when you go there, and you're in and out. And so I think they've been a good partner and a good neighbor to this county and the residents of this county. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comment?
I'd like to make a comment, but it's not I was going to do it after you do the vote, but I'll do it now. I think Carney, Mr. Newkirk, and Bryant should be commended for a great job that they've done during the time of this winter storm. I mean, you got information, and these guys have had it tough. House burning down, people sliding in ditches, and they were still out there doing their job. I think they should be commended for a job well done.
I thank you on that, and I just want to make sure I look at that from all of our staff in every way. Glenn has been a right-hand person in our EMS. I know you're saying that, but I just want to make sure that credit extends.
Well, Mr. Carney, you probably were not there in the snow, but I just said that. In other words, you were plump.
Actually, Glenn and I were out till about 5:15 in the morning on the first snow day.
Yeah, I knew that. But I really think y'all should be commended. I mean, we was well informed. Our people was taken care of. and y'all sacrifice y'all families and y'all lives for the betterment of the citizens of Beaufort County. I think you should be commended.
I can truly say team effort completely. Thank you for that.
You're going to get that in there, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You're doing good.
Got good people.
Thank you very much, and thank the citizens, because I think people stayed at home and listened to what the law enforcement people were saying, and but just not being out there, because one more vehicle is one more chance of one skidding into a canal or a ditch someplace.
Commissioner Ward, Chairman Waters, just real quickly too, and Commissioner Booth, I was not out at 3 and 4 o'clock.
You was sending emails too.
But I would like to commend all of our staff,
Yeah.
Our Public Works Department, our Water Department, our Emergency Services Group. I mean, they did an outstanding job, and we've been in a situation for the last several days that we've not seen in many, many years, if we've ever seen. Terribly cold, and I think our group came together and did exactly what you expect them to do, and I would echo your commitment to them.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of moving ahead with the purchase, raise your right hand. Okay, vote was unanimous. This is the coldest spell that we've had since, make sure I get it right, 1918. I want to say 2018, but it's been 100 years since we've had this kind of temperature below freezing for any extended period of time. I think the last time the record was 5 days in Greenville and 6 days in Kinston, and that was 100 years ago. So, okay, we're going to, item number 3 was pooled, Martin, and I think that was you. So now we're down to item number 4, the resolution opposing Sunday hunting of waterfowl. Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I'll make this as short as I can. There is a resolution that came from Dare County that I've presented here that opposes the Sunday hunting of ducks. There's a lot of Sunday hunting out there under a lot of different conditions, but this is being opposed by basically the duck hunting community for a whole lot of reasons. There are only going to be so many days of duck hunting, whether you pass Sunday hunting or you don't, because they're going to take some weekdays if you do Sunday hunting, and they're just going to subtract it. I think it's 60 days or whatever the law says, you're going to get that. What days do you want? North Carolina's got a hunting season right now, a duck hunting season, that is divided into at least 3 parts. This supports duck hunting because ducks figure out who's shooting at them and they move to other places. So that's why the system is as fragmented as it is. It's fragmented for a purpose. And a lot of people think that it's going to hurt the duck hunting sport. I have a different reason for opposing this that's more important in my mind, and that is we have allowed too many things to go on Sunday that distract from religious activities. And we don't need to have any more things that distract from religious activities, because religion is suffering in the United States and North Carolina right now. So I'm opposed to this. I intend to vote against it. I intend to vote for the resolution and against Sunday duck hunting.
Are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion, yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and second. Other comments?
I have comments, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
There are 2 bills pending. One is in the House, and I'm not going to go through the whole bill, but it limits hunting on Sunday between the hours of 9:30 and 12:30. And that's the House bill. And it also says that if the law does pass, there'd have to be a countywide referendum held if you wanted to allow Sunday hunting of ducks. And then there's a Senate bill which goes into, doesn't have those 2 provisions, but it talks about, or it does have it prohibited between 9:30 and 12:30 where they agree. Then it talks about 500 yards of a place of worship and 500 yards of a resident. So that I did find. I've had a number of calls on the issue, probably equally for and equally against. A couple of them said, look, we just don't have enough information. I don't know if you have enough information on this. So it's not that I'm for or against it, but I guess my question is, do we have enough information available now in order to make a decision on this resolution? And when it comes to church attendance, I firmly believe if you're not planning to go to church, it's just another excuse not to go. If you're going to go to church, you're going to go. And anyways, as I said, It prohibits duck hunting from between 9:30 and 12:30. But like I said, do we have enough information? I don't know if I have enough information whether to support this resolution or not to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've had comments, and most of them have been in favor of opposing hunting on Sunday, mainly because ducks need a break. They move around. There's no way you can hunt in the same place even 6 days in a row. You have to rotate that, so they need a break. As I understand it from the local hunters, primarily in Beaufort and Hyde counties, they're not in favor of hunting on Sunday. I've been told, I've not seen this in print, but I've been told that Ducks Unlimited is also opposed to hunting ducks on Sunday. There is an outside group that's moved into the state, and they've gone right to Raleigh, and they're trying to make this change. My only comment, I'm going to vote to oppose hunting on Sunday, but I really hate for us to zero in on hunters and take one day away from them. We don't do it for fishermen. We have sports fishermen up and down the Pamplico River hunt 7 days a week. I mean, fish is 7 days a week. I mean, it's a sport.
Well, amend Hood's motion is.
I've already tried. I tried to work a deal out in the back. I tried to get him to support my motion on fishing.
Now,
And he says, I know where you're going. He said, I won't do that. He said, you're going to want to limit fishing in Bloods Creek on Sunday. And I said, no.
Now, we do allow hunting of deer on Sundays.
On private land.
Yeah.
On private land. Okay. Any other comments before we take a vote? All those supporting the motion to oppose hunting on Sunday, raise your right hand. Is it 4? Okay. Those opposed, raise your right hand. So the vote's 4-3.
Hood wants to see you in church Sunday morning.
We did send that to all the counties in the state, too.
Okay, we're down to item number 5, bid and offer to purchase property. David.
I'll make this very quick. You can see there are 5 offers that we have there at varying amounts from $50 to $500. We have deposits on these, and if you were to vote in favor of accepting those offers, they will be publicized and be subject to upset bid.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
So,
Motion by Commissioner Buzzio. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Evans. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those opposed, unanimous. Okay, the next item is 6, the payment to Vidant for 1240 Cow Farm Road and 601 East 11th Street. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. One correction on this, but overall, the statutory requirement upset bid process has concluded for both of those properties. 1240 Cow Farm Road closed at $82,000, and 601 East 11th Street sold for $85,000. So what we're asking you to do is approve the budget amendment to receive those funds in and allow us to cut that check, because as you recall, the agreement with Vidant on those pieces of property that allowed you to pull those out of the lease required that we split the profits with them. Now, there is one correction on this, and that is on the 601 East 11th Street property that sold for $85,000. The gentleman that bought it actually wrote 2 checks. He wrote one to Vidant and wrote one to us for half and half. So if you will look on page 153, which is the budget amendment, and scratch out that last section in the budget amendment where it says $85,000 for sale of fixed assets and appropriated fund balance of $42,500 and payment divided for $42,500, just scratch that, because we don't need to do that. We're simply going to take the check that he wrote divided and hand it divided. It doesn't have to flow through our books. But we do have to show the sale of the fixed asset on 1240 Cow Farm Road coming in at 82, being a budget amendment that allows us to expend 41, which is half of that, and cut that check divided. So we'd recommend your approval.
Okay. Got a motion by Commissioner Langley. Is there a second by Commissioner Buzzio? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Vote was 6-1. Number 7, the budget amendment and capital project ordinance for $3.5 million. Anita?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This agenda item formalizes the budgetary piece of the action that you took on December the 4th. If you'll recall, a decision was made to pay for the major capital in the budget by loaning the general fund $3.5 million from the healthcare reserve, making general fund reductions of $122,352, and appropriating additional general fund balance of $400,000. So in order to do that and take care of the budgetary piece of that, we need to have you adopt the budget amendment and the capital project ordinance you will find on page 156 and 157.
Any questions of Anita? Okay, I entertain a motion
So
to.
moved.
Motion by Commissioner Brent. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Evans. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All those opposed? 5-2. We're down to the Coastal Resource Advisory Committee. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've got a letter attached from the North Carolina Coastal Resources Advisory Council requesting nominations. They have 4 open slots. As you'll recall, Seth Laughlin, our planning director, actually serves on that council. Commissioner Brin has expressed interest in serving as well in one of those vacant positions. So we would recommend your approval to nominate Commissioner Brin as one of those 4 current vacant positions.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Booth and a second by Commissioner Buzzio to nominate Commissioner Brin to fill one of these slots. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Okay, vote was unanimous. We're down to item number 9, resolution authorizing receipt of 2017 property taxes without interest until today, January the 8th. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a resolution in front of you, or actually as part of your change item, authorizing the receipt of 2017 property taxes without interest until 5 p.m. today, January the 8th, due to inclement weather closing on Friday. General Statute 105-395.1 allows the county commissioner, or actually it directs that the payment date be moved if it falls on a weekend or a holiday. So it's moved to the next business day, so the taxpayer gets that additional day. According to, because we were closed on Friday and that was the last day, in the spirit of that law, according to the attorneys at the School of Government and according to our local attorney who has reviewed that, he believes that the spirit of the law is that you allow that extra day when you are closed, whether it be for a holiday or for a weekend. Although it's not specifically written in the statute that way, that's the interpretation, that's the spirit of it. So this resolution allows you to move that, says that you agree to move that to today at 5 o'clock for payment of taxes without interest. Of course, after 5 o'clock today, anything received gets the interest attached to it. But this is because of the inclement weather closing on Friday. So we'd recommend your approval.
So moved.
Okay, motion was made by Commissioner Langley. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Evans. Any discussion? If not, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, raise your right hand. Vote was unanimous. Okay, we're down to item number 10, which was added. This is a resolution opposing the proposal to appoint judges in the state of North Carolina. Mr. Langley.
Okay, thank you. I called myself, I thought I was going to be good and we were going to work on this resolution together, but I didn't expect that we'd be here at 10 minutes to 9. So basically, I guess we still can do that, but pretty much plain and simple is I don't think it's good for the citizens of North Carolina to have their local judges appointed by folk in Raleigh. I mean, because if you look at this thing, and let me just do it this way. We're here in Beaufort County. Would you really want a judge in Beaufort County from Avery County? Is that really and truly what you want? And my other point is this. We've been electing our judges for as long as I can remember. Not somebody in Raleigh saying who's going to be judges in your district. You should not take that choice away from people. You should have say in everybody who's elected, not have people appointed by folks sitting in Raleigh. So I think it's important that we as a Board of Commissioners unanimously agree and send this resolution to Raleigh opposing them changing the way we elect judges. I think it's important that we keep that right to ourselves. And I don't know how any other commissioners feel about that, but I feel very strongly about that. We need to keep that privilege for ourselves, and we should not have it dictated to us who we will stand before when we've done wrong or when we are victims of crimes and expect proper judgment. I know the system is somewhat flawed, but right now I think it's the best system that we have.
I'll second that motion. Discussion, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to throw into this, since the wording of this, is somewhat important, that if we pass this, we designate Commissioner Langley to work with the manager or whoever to form the motion, and if he approves it, it goes out.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. And the vote was unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we're down to item number 11 that was moved from consent.
Mr. Chairman?
The green lamp.
Yeah, let me just do this. We don't have anybody here that represents them tonight, do we?
Mr. Buzio serves on that board.
Okay, then, I have some questions about that. How much of this, in reading this, it looked like there's $667,000 for a part of this. How much of this money flows into Beaufort County?
It's in there. I'm trying to.
I didn't see it. I looked for it. I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it. Give me the page number.
32.
Wait, it starts on 32. Maybe it was one of the other grants. I thought it had it broken out.
I looked to see what Beaufort County gets out of this, and I couldn't see. Commissioner Buzio, could we?
What it says, it gives, if you look at page 34, it talks about green lamp and staff represent the agency and well, first of all, let me say they're not asking for anything from the county. That's number one. Number two is they go to all the counties that have part or get some of these services. And so we have to fill out, the clerk would fill out page 33, and that would go into green lamp, and then that would go to the applicant or for the grant, for the approval of the grant.
And
Now,
there's
green lamp and
no
SIP.
dues involved in this. Is there any dues involved in it?
No money from this. And SIP represent the agent power serves, goes on in the second paragraph. Advisory groups, task groups, and local, state, and federal committees or boards. The agency operates 4 major programs: Head Start, Early Head Start, Child Care Partnership Program, and Early Head Start Center-based programs serving Greene and Lower counties. 2, foster grant.
Page 50, Hood gives the amount coming to each one of the counties.
Yeah.
It's at the very top. Item number B, Beaufort County's number is $86,002. And it shows the amount. Pitt County is the one that gets the majority.
What page is that on?
Page 50 at the very top.
That's out of the $672,000.
Yeah,
That's how it's broken out.
And so when you look at what I was reading here, when you look at that, it gives Beaufort is community services block grant self-sufficiency program serving Beaufort, Greene, Lenoir, and Pitt counties. So they group into counties by the type of services they provide. And then as the chairman said, agency resources, $672,000, $86,000 goes for Beaufort County, $44,000, and then it gives the counties, each county what.
But they don't have an office here in the county.
Yes, they do.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, where Piggly Wiggly used to be, where the new food line is.
I've never heard of them.
They have a service there. Green Lamp's a big organization. It covers like 5 counties.
I think, I'm willing to vote for this. But I think we need to have somebody from Green Lamp come and tell us how many families they serve and what they've done for the families and enlighten us about what they're doing.
A lot of the if a lot of it is actually in here, total number expected to be served on this is 120, expected number of new clients 36, expected number of carryover clients 84. And so it goes in, when you read this, there's a lot of details in it.
I would just like to be sure that we're getting our fair share. I've never heard of them before.
Well, for the past 4 years, this has come before us each year.
I have no memory of it.
Yeah, every year. And what we do is
And to clarify, what this is actually asking you to do is not necessarily to approve the grant application itself. What this is our administrative code for the state of North Carolina requires this community action group to show you what they're applying for. And they're asking you to submit questions back. They're not asking you.
So we don't need to vote on this.
Well, what you're voting on is what it says down here. You're giving me permission to send this form back stating that you received a copy of the grant and that you have no questions, or if you do have questions, I can submit those for you to Green Lamp.
Well, the only question I have is I want to see a person from Green Lamp come and give a little report.
this
That'll
has to be
satisfy
by the
me.
15th, I think, the date's.
The questions have to be submitted by the 15th.
Yeah.
The application itself, or this piece of paper is a little bit late.
You know, I don't have a problem agreeing to it. I just want to know more about them, because everywhere I turn around, somebody's giving money away, and I just like to be familiar with who's giving and who's getting.
They were here 2 years ago and gave a presentation. I thought you did.
Okay, well, they can come back and give another one.
I'd like to make a motion, we go ahead and approve this so the county clerk can authorize,
I don't have a problem conditioned on they're going to come and give us a 10 or 15-minute program.
not a problem.
Will you
Okay.
will you second his motion?
Yeah, if
Okay.
that's the motion, that they come and give a 10 or 15-minute program.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, that was unanimous.
And I would suggest before that, read this document because it has a lot of detail in it.
Okay, we're down to the item J, closed session. You going to do that, David, or Katie? You want to read us?
Brian and I are, he's going to be in with us, and we have a couple of visitors I'm going to speak to you about. In addition to the matter that's mentioned here, which is the Legal Differences Board, 17 CBS.
You're going to read us into.
Motion is needed to go into closed session under SCGS 143-31811A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, and for discussion of existing litigation, Larry versus Board of Commissioners, 17 CBS 313.
I would like to add to that, and questions about some insurance matters.
That would follow an attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, but I mean, we have to say what we're discussing in closed session.
No, sir, you don't.
We have to give a general on it. You can't just go into, okay, fine. That's fine. That's why that's why we got a lawsuit.
No, sir.
Okay, we have a motion.
second
Is there a
it.
second? Motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Coming back out of closed session, I'll entertain a motion
So moved.
to adjourn. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Get up.
Thank you very much.